You ever speak to me like that again, better be wearing a cup.
Baby steps.
One break, I'm in
Okay, friends, let's everybody take your positions, please. Here we go. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, rolling. Dave!
Unchained.
Welcome to Dave and Dave Unchained, a Van Halen podcast. I'm Dave.
And I am Dave.
And I am hot as hell because we are sweltering here in August, melting down. The heat this summer has been tremendous here on the East Coast. How are you holding up, Dave?
Doing all right, but I think the only people winning in the heat are those who own the power companies.
Oh, my God. Yeah, they're making out like bandits for sure. This is crazy. But if you can believe it or not, Dave, we are in our 80th episode. Can you believe it? We've made it to 80. So
Look at that.
Pretty intense. And as time goes on, believe it or not, there's more and more Van Halen news.
Van Halen
News! And holy shit, did we get Van Halen news. So, oh my God, it's hard to believe that it just keeps rolling out the way it does. But the biggest news to come out is that David Lee Roth, original lead singer of Van Halen, came out with the song everybody's been waiting for. Nothing could have stopped us back then anyway. And here's a clip of that.
We laughed, we cried, we threw the television off that balcony. That memory means so much to me. No doubt in me, I do believe that no one listens to both sides except the neighbors. Fine art of compromise, happy losing half of mine, 'cause she'll lose her half later. First taste of being victim of the very songs I sing. Ended up with say goodbye, and I hope I hear good things. And walk away, walk away. Nothing could have stopped us back then anyway.
Well, this came out at the end of our last podcast, and I tacked it on there. But more importantly than the song is the video that accompanies this song. And this video was put together, Dave, by John 5 himself. John 5, the guitarist for Rob Zombie, who also played on Dave's DLR album from 1998, and is playing on the California Sessions, which is the album this song is supposedly coming from. Now, he's on this song, but he also made this video. This video is all hardcore vintage Van Halen. It must be the most Van Halen thing to come out since probably Wolf's video about Ed, which was a really cool, intimate look at Ed and his background. But this is even more Van Halen than that, believe it or not, because this is really digging into the archives of Van Halen. The video is short because the song is short. It's like 2 minutes and, 45 seconds or something. Old clips. And I mean vintage Van Halen. We're not talking about like 84 or even Diver Down. There's a couple of photos from the Diver Down era, but it's mainly old video of the band on stage, some from 8mm. They have some stills, color and black and white, old concert posters, and they show the bus on the road, backstage shots, different things like that. All David Lee Roth era, of course, and real hardcore vintage stuff. I have to say, I mean, John 5 is a guitarist. He's an amazing guitarist. Holy shit, he did some job with this video. The way it flows into each other, I don't know if you guys remember, but in the song, like when he talks about having a Happy Meal, you know, they show the picture of them having McDonald's, like everything's queued up perfectly. A lot of Neil's Lowes-Hour photos in there, Neil doing the classic Van Halen photos, clips from the videos, you know, clips from old interviews, and it really made the song, I think, even stronger. What do you think, Dave?
Oh, definitely. So the song finally comes out. It's pretty brief. It's not that long.
Very brief. In fact, I'll say the clip that we had, that we played and John 5 released years ago, is almost the whole song. It's basically...
Well, right. I mean, it feels like that.
It almost feels like just a repeat of the first clip.
Right.
And then it's over.
But the song is like, I mean, it's barely like, I think it's like 2 minutes and 35 seconds or something like that.
Something like that. 2 minutes, 35 or 45, something like that. It's very short.
Right. It's a good song. I think if Dave had released that one when Eddie passed away, like that would have been the home run. He really would have knocked it right out of the park.
Because of the power of the time, it could have almost even charted. Because if he had released that video with that song at that time, I would have been like, wow. You know why? It would have been all over the media. It would have been all over the media, and it would have gone viral.
Right. No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And kudos to John 5 for putting out that video. I mean, he nailed it perfectly. In fact, he nailed it so much that David Lee Roth put it out on his own channel on YouTube.
Right.
And I want to thank the guys from the DLR podcast for pointing that out, because I didn't even realize that until I looked it up. So that's how much Dave was impressed. He officially sanctioned it. So there you go.
But I would imagine, though, that Dave must have had a conversation with John. I mean, John, I don't think just took it upon himself to make a video without going to Dave first. I mean, you have to realize, John's not just some fan from Ohio. I mean, he's a friend of Dave's. He's a colleague that works with him. So maybe he said to Dave, hey, why don't you let me take a crack at this? I have a good idea for a video. And Dave's like, hey, go ahead, knock yourself out. And the way certain lines hit certain photos and the way they end with the bow, it's so well put together. You could tell a lot of time and thought has been put into it. And the cool part is they show you like old concert posters from their shows, like, stuff that like Greg Renoff had in his book, like old school stuff. And it really was very vintage Van Halen. When everybody pulls out clips, they're pulling out Ost Festival clips from the 84 videos, all the kind of broad stroke stuff. This was like vintage Van Halen shit. And you're almost like, oh my God, somebody hired John 5 to do the archives. Because
absolutely. I mean, as a fanboy, it was great. But again, like, the song is so short. You want more from the song. But after you watch the video, you're like, I wish the song was like a couple of minutes more so we could see more of this stuff.
I think the video even made the song more powerful because there was so much build up to the song. And I was like, I mean, it's good. It's not like bowling me over, but when I saw that video, it really bowled me over, and the song sentiment, I think, really came through. Now, John was comparing it in the past to Damn Good. Damn Good from 1988's Skyscraper was definitely a similar acoustic vibe, kind of looking back at the old days kind of song. That is definitely a much more, like, lush, full song. There's much more production to that. I think it's a better song. It's also way more thought out. This is more of like a fun little ditty type of thing, but the video is tremendous. There's no video for Damn Good, although a fan has made one. If you guys want to go check that out, which is actually really, really cool. I love that video that the fan made, but this was, I thought, was really interesting and probably one of the best things that Dave has put out. That video, it just screams Van Halen. And it makes anybody, not even just the hardcores like us, anybody who's just a casual fan, like somebody who just knows the broad strokes of Van Halen, would stop, look at that, and be like, wow, those guys were really something. It gives you the flavor, and I'm not surprised because John 5's a hardcore fanboy. As much as talented as he is, and he's off the charts talented, he's also a very hardcore fanboy when it comes to Van Halen. When it comes to Kiss, he's a huge fanboy too. He does an Instagram, I think it's called Nights in Satan's Service. That's what it is, Nights in Satan's Service. And he does it on Instagram, and he has a Kiss collection that is bar none. And what he does with that Instagram is, for Kiss fans, he shows them a special piece of his collection like every day or every week or something. And you could go on his Instagram and just see the craziest Kiss stuff. And you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe he has that. Oh my God, I can't believe he has that. And it's really kind of cool. So he's a real hardcore fanboy, John. And you can tell that someone like him put the care into it and the way it all falls together and certain things that he shows. And it's not just Dave. There's Mike. There's tons of Mike. There's tons of the brothers. A ton of the Van Halen brothers in there too. And it really showed the camaraderie from the early days. And it showed also the power that the band had on stage. So what did you think?
Oh, yeah. Like I said before, loved it. Really good. You know, again, came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Very surprising because he had just released another song about a month or so ago. Yeah. And so I certainly wasn't expecting another song for him for another few months. That was a pleasant surprise. Because I remember we were done with the podcast, and then within like a week, Dave, Sam, and Talis had all released new music.
I know.
It's like, what's going on around here? This is great. But wow, like, holy cow.
Yeah, it was crazy. It exploded. Speaking of which, obviously the other lead singer of Van Halen, Sammy Hagar, came out with his single, Crazy Times. Here's the clip.
Baby, what's the worry? Someday we're all gonna die. Everybody's in a hurry in these crazy times.
So now this song came out as a single. I put this on the last podcast, tagged it on September 30th. The album's coming out. It's got 12 tracks. Now, the cool thing about this is we finally got a date for the Sammy album. We got the first song, which is the title track. There's also a video to go with this. Now, the video is way more modern. It's sort of the opposite of the Dave video, which is way vintage. It's got the band performing in front of like a green screen, and there's kind of destruction of things blowing up and exploding and on fire and melting behind them. I guess to sort of show the insanity of our times and how everything is sort of out of control. And there's all kinds of visual effects used to make it interesting because it's basically just the band performing. Sammy's doing some Pete Townsend windmills there. Now, Dave, I don't know if you noticed this in the song. At about 2 minutes and 42 seconds, there's a spot in the song that goes from 2 minutes and 42 seconds to 3 minutes and 19 seconds. And it's just like a dead spot in the song. Like the bass is low in the background and the drums are going low and the guitar. And it's like you're waiting for like a solo to come flying in and nothing happens. Listen to this clip right here. Now, I didn't quite understand it, and almost like they were putting filler in there, and that was kind of strange. Then, about 3 minutes and 49 seconds in, Vic comes in with his solo right here. Now, as for the song, I like the music, but I feel like, I don't know, it's like missing a melodic hook or something. I don't know, the chorus is kind of weak. Like, it's kind of like in these crazy times, and it's like, okay. I mean, the song is growing on me. I'm enjoying it more as time goes on, but I guess I felt like the song has sort of like a big build-up, and it just doesn't seem to take off. Do you get that feeling?
Well, I wouldn't quite say it that way. But
okay.
That's not the first time he's done that. What was the name of the song he released after he was kicked out of Van Halen the first time?
That was Little White Lie.
Right. It's kind of like Little White Lie.
Yeah.
Like there's a build-up, but it never really kicks in until like almost the end of the song.
It stays in one mode.
Right. So this time, it's an okay song. It's not a great song.
Right.
I hear what you're saying about that middle spot. It's almost like Whole Lotta Love, where they have like that sound montage going.
Right.
Without a solo. Although I wouldn't put this song in the same basket,
right? Obviously,
as Whole Lotta Love. It doesn't really wow me over. The production is kind of men's to me. It's not really that clear.
Okay.
And for this deaf old guy to notice that, like, it's really got to be something, quite frankly.
I thought the guitar was a little lost in the mix.
Well, I'll tell you what I thought was low. I thought the background vocals were low.
First of all,
because you really came through a mic.
Abso-fucking-lutely. That was the next thing I was going to say. Other than like like that whole thing, like where's Mike? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, where the hell is Mike?
No, exactly. So all these things put together, I was kind of like, it's definitely not a country song. They weren't lying about that.
No, it's not a country song.
And it is. It's a little rough. It's raw. To sound like going for it. It's not a positive song. It's not like, hey, good time, Sammy.
No.
Like, between the song and the video, this is really.
It's dark.
A pessimistic, well, I would say bizarre, but I'd say a pessimistic song coming from Sammy.
Yeah, I know.
It's almost like end of the world stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
no, that's what I'm saying.
What happened to, one shot? Hey, it's not that kind of song.
No. In fact, Sammy did some interviews about the album, and he talked about that a little bit, and he says here, I'm usually Mr. Sunshine, so I didn't mind, among my favorite bands in the world are Tool and Pink Floyd, and I love these dark bands, that sort of thing is not usually what I am, but Crazy Times, well, it's not dark, but it's definitely darker than most of what I do. So the song is basically about how I felt coming out of the other side of everything we've gone through in the past couple years, and he recorded it in the fall of 2021, and said the lyrics for Crazy Times just came from that new freedom we're feeling. The freedom felt unbelievable, but a little uncertain too. He said those 2 years of not being able to do very much fell away, and we really all came together and let it out in the music and the lyrics. We were able to express what we all felt. Now, interesting enough, I thought this was weird. He did a cover on the album of Elvis Costello's Pump It Up, which is sort of funny. I thought that was a out of left field choice. Okay, I'm curious to hear that. Maybe he's rocking.
You know who else has done a cover of that song?
Who?
Gary Sharon.
On what?
On Hurt Smile. Hurt Smile has done a cover of that song.
Wow, that's interesting. I got to look into that.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Hey guys, just wanted to let you know that Sammy Hagar and the Circle dropped their second single, their cover of Elvis Costello and the Attractions, Pump It Up. Here's a clip.
Now to your regularly scheduled program.
Now, he said that Dave Cobb kind of pursued Sam. He went over to Sam and he said that he wanted to make the best album of his career, and he wasn't going to let me out of the studio until I gave it to him. And then I said, well, at my age, as many records as I've made, you're going to have to push me. And he said, no problem. Obviously, I dug down and tried to write good songs, really with great lyrics and great melodies, not worried too much about the arrangements because he had that covered. And they went into the studio with 7 songs, came out with 10. They ended up co-writing 3 songs with Dave Cobb, and Crazy Times is obviously one of those tunes.
Right, and that leads to something, because they did 10 songs. You noted there were 12 on the album, because I think there's 2 bonus tracks.
Yeah.
But isn't there something strange going on with the bonus tracks? Like, what are they a bonus for?
It's weird. First of all, you got the song Father Time, and there's like 2 versions of that. Yeah.
But for some reason, he's not putting the bonus tracks on a CD and trying to sell the CD. Like, I think, isn't it like the other way around, which strikes me
Which
as
you normally get the bonus tracks on the CD, you mean?
I don't think the bonus tracks are on the CD.
I don't know. Now, the album comes out on September 30th, but then if you want the vinyl, you got to wait for October 28th. They're going to have translucent and red-colored vinyl, but then also regular vinyl. But you got to wait for October 28th because, I don't know if many people know, but a lot of vinyl production is backed the fuck up because of the amount of people looking for vinyl. And there's not a lot of like pressing plants now. I don't know, but they're backed up and everybody's like waiting in line. So the vinyl's always coming out late now. Now, here's the other strange thing about the track listing here. He's got like intro, the beginning of the end. Now, I don't even know, is that just an intro or a song? And then it says here, Slow Drain, Feed Your Head, Pump It Up, which is the cover, Be Still, Get What You Pay For. Song we heard him do in concert a little bit. Crazy Times, obviously. We talked about Funky Feng Shui. Wasn't that on the lockdown sessions?
Yes. So hopefully, Dave, you'll finally get your full version of the song.
Yeah, I know. Then Father Time, and then Childhood End. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how this all falls out. And then there's like the Father Time acoustic. I don't know. But it should be interesting now. Apparently, Dave Cobb pursued Sam for 3 years to make this album. And Sam said, I really got to give credit to Dave Cobb. They praised the living hell out of this guy. Because I turned him down 3 years ago when he first approached me to make a record. Dave said, let me know when you want to make the definitive Sammy Hagar record and contact me. And then, I guess he kept pursuing him and he finally melted him down. So that's coming out,
All right, well, that's good. I looked up Father Time. I don't think it's been officially released, but he has done it acoustically in the past. It looks like he was playing it around 5 years ago.
Now, sadly, a very big man in the history of Van Halen passed away. Mo Austin, the legendary Warner Brothers record chief, died at 95 years old, David, and God bless him. This guy lived to 95, and he died peacefully in his sleep on July 31st. I actually was trying to pursue to get this guy on the podcast, if you could believe that, because I would love to speak to him. Now, Mo Austin ran Warner Brothers Records for something like 30 years. He worked with so many artists, it's ridiculous. Joni Mitchell, The Kinks, Jimi Hendrix, Fleetwood Mac. He was the man behind the whole Rumors album. R.E.M., Randy Newman, and of course, Van Halen. He worked there until about the mid-90s. So he worked from like the mid-60s to the mid-90s, and then he went over and he was working for DreamWorks SKG, and he worked there from like 96 to 2004. So he really was there for Van Halen's entire tenure, right up until when Sammy left the band. So he was there for the signing, everything, and straight through the Sammy years. He was not there during the Gary Sharon era or the Different Kind of Truth era, but not the Different Kind of Truth was on Warner Brothers anyway. But so, yeah, and he worked with, oh my God, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Sammy Davis Jr., Van Morrison, Grateful Dead, Madonna, Prince, Green Day. I mean, this guy had some career. It was really tremendous, and he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2003, and the Recording Academy honored him with a President's Merit Award in 2014 and a Trustees Award in 2017, and he was sort of a big powerhouse in Warner Brothers, but then a corporate power struggle led him to leave the company, so it was interesting. Funny enough, the first rock band that he signed in 1964 was the Kinks, and their top 10 hit from that year was You Really Got Me, which is funny because then he ended up releasing that song with Van Halen back in the day. He also worked with Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Dire Straits, ZZ Top, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Sex Pistols, George Benson, Rod Stewart, Ricky Lee Jones, Chaka Khan, Randy Newman, Emmylou Harris, Bonnie Raitt, Ice-T. It was just really tremendous. And if you remember the Van Halen story that Mo Austin is very famous for is when the band was working with Sammy in 1985, kind of secretly, and they wouldn't let anybody into the studio, 5150, and Mo Austin came to 5150 to listen to the band, and I guess they played Why Can't This Be Love, and he put his finger in the air and he said, I smell money. So if you remember, that was sort of a funny little note that Van Halen used to tell about Mo, and that he obviously kind of saw the potential with Sammy in Van Halen, almost like, okay, this is going to work kind of thing. He kind of gave the official okay from Warner Brothers. But so sorry to see him go.
That guy must have 1,000,001 stories.
Oh, can you imagine?
To tell.
Unbelievable. But I don't know if he ever wrote a book, but I hope he did.
Yeah.
Now, Polestar, which is the concert industry magazine, it's sort of like the equivalent of Billboard for the touring industry, right? So they came out with the top touring artists of the Polestar era box office grosses. Now, what does that mean? The Polestar era is the last 40 years. So that means from 82 to now. So that's sort of like, the barometer there. So if you think about it, Dave, if you were to take a guess, I have in front of me, it's the top 100 touring artists of the Polestar era box office grosses. Now, Dave's a numbers guy. He's a accountant. Where do you think Van Halen landed on the top 100? If you could also guess how much money you think they made touring-wise and how many tickets they sold. The tickets sold might be hard to guess, but take a stab. Where do you think they landed? Of all the bands, now this is not just rock. This is all artists who tour. Over the past 40 years, so 82 to now, where would Van Halen fall in the top 100 touring artists of the Polestar era, box office grosses, and how much you think they made? Take a guess.
Well, I did see the headline, so I think they came in at around like number 54, if I remember correctly.
No, they did not.
Oh, they did not.
They came in at number 91.
Oh, really? I thought it was higher than that. Wow.
And how much you think they made? Take a guess how much they made. Touring dollars.
$200 million.
Well, I guess you're somewhere in the ballpark. $295 million and change, and they sold 7.4 million tickets. Believe it or not, this is low in comparison to what I would call their peers. Their peers being Journey came in at number 45 with 470 million. Their peers being Def Leppard at 42, 514 million. Peers being Kiss, 41, came in at 532 million. Aerosmith, they came in at number 31 at 603 million. AC/DC at number 27 with 668 million. Guns N' Roses coming in at 23 with 751 million. Take a guess. Who's in the top 10, Dave? Who do you think's in the top 10 of the touring bands, or acts, I should say?
Oh, man. Michael Jackson?
Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson hardly toured. No, he's not there.
Bon Jovi?
Okay, you got one.
Rolling Stones?
You got two.
Eagles?
You got three. He's on a roll, folks.
How many do you want me to guess?
There's 10. There's 10. Come on. I bet you can get
10?
these. There might be like one or two surprises, but...
Fleetwood Mac?
No, they're not in the top.
Okay. Oh, wait. Garth Brooks?
No.
No, I thought he was... No.
I'll tell you where Garth Brooks is. Hold on. While I look up Garth Brooks, you keep guessing. I think didn't Garth stop touring for a while? He
did, but I thought he was selling oodles of tickets when he was touring.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. He's number 82, right under the Who.
Oh, again, I thought he would be higher. Is there a country artist in the top 10?
No. Tell me when you're ready for me to round it out if you're too tired.
I'm going to say Iron Maiden?
No.
All right, then round it up for me.
Okay. Number 1 is the Rolling Stones with $2.1 billion. Number 2 is U2 with $2.1 billion. Obviously, this change, this is very specific. I don't want to get into all that. Number 3, Elton John, which I thought was shocking at number 3, but he came in with $1.7 billion. Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, $1.5 billion. Madonna, $1.3 billion. Celine Dion, biggest surprise, $1.3 billion. Bon Jovi, $1.3 billion and change. Eagles, $1.3 billion and change. Splitting hairs here. Metallica, $1.2 billion. And Paul McCartney, $1.1 billion. So, interesting enough, right? I mean, that's pretty crazy. And
wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Madonna was so high up. Wow.
Yeah, Madonna being high up, and Celine Dion. I mean, who the fuck thought? I mean, I love Celine Dion. I actually took my wife to see her right before the shutdown. But I never thought she'd be that fucking high. Fleetwood Mac, number 28 with $663 million. So I guess this took in account Diver Down, 1984, all the Sammy years, the time with Gary, and then Van Halen's touring with Dave after that. I thought they'd be higher than that. I mean, because there's people that are ahead of Van Halen that is absolutely shocking.
Right. But Van Halen has 2 strikes against them. Number 1, they basically only toured the States.
Yeah.
And number 2, they missed their prime money-making years when ticket prices went through the roof.
You're right. It's crazy. I mean,
I mean, John Bon Jovi tours. He tours and he tours and he tours.
Yeah, you're right. They didn't
around the world. And he does so regularly.
Globally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
you're right.
There you go.
So now, another thing came out, which is really interesting. This is some really cool Van Halen news, and I hope this happens. It looks like it's going to happen, so we'll see what happens. But Tony Martin, is the old singer for Black Sabbath. Now, obviously everybody knows that Ozzy was the lead singer of Black Sabbath. Also, everybody knows that the most famous replacement was Ronnie James Dio. He was sort of like the Sammy Hagar for that band. They had a success with Ronnie James Dio, but Tony Martin did a whole era of Black Sabbath, okay? He came in, he did The Eternal Idol in 1987, Headless Cross in 1989, TYR in 1990, Cross Purposes in 1994, Cross Purposes Live in 1995, and Forbidden in 1995. He did 6 albums as the lead singer of Black Sabbath, and you know what? His era was pretty good. There was some really good stuff there, but he sort of got lost in the sauce a little bit because Black Sabbath got watered down. No one was really paying attention to Black Sabbath. But Tony Iommi really enjoyed those years, and he thought there was some really good stuff there. So now, when Tony Martin went on the Rock and Metal Professors, the History and Philosophy of Rock and Metal podcast, he talked about plans to reissue his era of Black Sabbath albums and that he recorded with the band. He says, I recorded a writing session with Eddie Van Halen. He came over and helped us write one of the tracks for 1994's Cross Purposes album. I had an 8-track recorder at the time in the 1980s, and I used to take it everywhere. And I've got all the writing sessions and rehearsals recorded with Eddie, so I sent Tony Iommi this, and he went, wow, that's fucking great. Tony Martin said, you're welcome to use it if you want to put that on. So I don't know, maybe you'll get that on there, because right now, Tony Iommi, who's been on the Eddie Trunk podcast, talking about that he's been working on doing these reissues. He's been kind of working on this project steadily. So now 2 years ago, when he started this, Iommi told Rolling Stone that, Van Halen had ended up co-writing a song, Evil Eye, on Cross Purposes. This is what Iommi said. He says, we were doing Cross Purposes and playing in Birmingham, and obviously I went to go see Eddie, and we were rehearsing. He said, you ought to come down here if you want. And I said, I'll pick you up from the hotel. And he said, let's go get a guitar. So they went down to a music shop in Birmingham, and they lent Eddie a guitar. They got one of his guitars, one of his own models there. He said that Eddie's favorite Black Sabbath song was Into the Void. He loved that song, and that they played that song, and then they went into writing, and they said they wrote Evil Eye. And then he said, go on, play the solo on this. And Eddie played the solo on Evil Eye. And he said he did it, and then he did it so great. And when I recorded it, of course, I couldn't even duplicate what he did. So I guess he did his own solo. But when asked if they still had the tape of Eddie's playing, Tony said, you know what? I know I have it amongst my stuff somewhere. I have to go look for it. It's a real gem. Now, that was 2 years ago when Rolling Stone interviewed him. And now we're talking about Tony Martin, who found the tape and gave it to Tony. So hopefully we're going to see this when this Sabbath reissue comes out of Eddie performing with Black Sabbath. Dave, what do you think of that?
That would be awesome, because that's been one of the things that's been talked about for years, but no one's ever really heard it. And then there was always some question if he actually played on the album version or not. Apparently he did not.
No.
But that would be awesome to hear.
Yeah, they have recordings of it, so that should be interesting. Tony Iommi is so cool, and he loved Ed. Him and Ed were really tight, and he would be happy to put that on there. So I can imagine that's going to happen. So we'll see what happens. But what is going to happen, and I recently spoke to some people about this, is the new book by photographer Niels Lozauer. We've talked about this before, and I'm going to give you guys an update. So, as we all know, Niels Lozauer, in my opinion, the best rock photographer out there. He's just ridiculous. So, Neil has the most Van Halen shots ever. He's got the most classic shots, whether it's studio or live. He has shot the living shit out of Van Halen through the years. And he put out his Van Halen book, and he put out a book on Ed, and he's been on this podcast. We've talked about it. It's all great. Well, since Ed passed, he decided to do a special book on Ed called Ed by Zloz, and that's Z-L-O-Z. That's his nickname, Zloz. So this book is ready to come out, and boy, is this going to be a whopper. It's 384 pages. It has thousands of images, 70% live shots, 30% studio shots. The book weighs 5 pounds, and it goes through the years from like 78 through to 96, so including the Sammy Hagar era. The book's going to run approximately around like $150 because it's like a big coffee table book. Ed is in every photo. They're all color photos with the except one, which is the last shot, which is black and white. Now, there's lost photos from the Van Halen 2 albums, photo sessions. There's backstage photos, photo shoots of on the set for the Pretty Woman videos. There's some funny stories by his lows in there. And this came out so good that there is a possibility of even doing a sequel in all black and white, because he has so many black and white images that he might even do that. The book is coming out in the fall, and we will let you know as soon as it's available for purchase. But I wanted to give you guys a little heads up on that. Dave, what do you think about that?
That's crazy, because hasn't he already published at least a couple of books on Van Halen?
Yes, and there's no repeats. There is no repeats.
Insane.
There's no repeats, and he has more.
That's insane, because I think I have his Van Halen book.
Yes,
and then I think he did a book on Ed.
Just on Ed, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, and now this is another book on Ed.
Right.
There's no man.
Nothing.
Man.
They really combed his archives. They did a really intense job combing his archives, and it really came out super nice. This is going to be great. It's just going to be tremendous. It's coming out in the fall. We'll give you guys more information as it comes. Now, also wanted to let you guys know that Billy Sheehan, David Lee Roth's former bassist, jumped on stage with Sammy Hagar in the Circle in Chicago July 9th to jam on the Montrose classic, Rock Candy. So that happened, and nice to know that Billy Sheehan is, he's friends with Mike, and I guess he must know Sam. So Billy getting ready for that new Talus album to come out in 1985. We talked about that before, and they have released the listing of songs, and I have it for you here. Inner Mounting Flame, I'll Take the Night, Crystal Clear, Don't Try to Stop Me Tonight, which is the third song they released. We'll talk about that in a minute. Do You Feel Any Better? On the Take, Come When You Call, The Power to Break Away, Black and Blue, Close to the Killer, and then this is what, 71 HD? 71 HD, I'm not really sure what that is. And you know
I'm going to have to rescind your Talus membership card.
Oh, no. Oh, no, what did I do wrong? And Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, which is, I'm assuming, a cover of the...
I think that's a bonus track on the Japanese album.
Oh, just the Japanese one?
Okay.
Oh, God. Okay, yell at me now. Uh-huh.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Turn it upside down, and now read what it says.
Turn it upside down.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it says Phil.
For Phil.
For Phil. Oh, wow.
And that, I believe, is a Billy Sheehan solo. And if you remember, that's how he used to name his solos in the old days. It would look like this gibberish, and then you would turn it upside down, and it would be like Bill Live or Sheehan, stuff like that. That was an ode to Phil.
An ode to Phil, wow. Okay.
Yes, and so, yes.
All right, cool. Excellent. Well, that's coming out September 23rd, 1985 from Talus. Look for that. And now, the song, Dave, what did you think of Don't Try to Stop Me Tonight? It was the third song. What was your impression of that?
I love it. I love it. I'm very biased. Going to tell everybody right now. But I love it. I cannot wait for this album to come out. It was great. I'm pretty sure it's Bill on lead vocals.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, and you can hear Phil doing background vocals. Really, really good.
Cool.
I love it. And I can't wait for this album to come out, even more so than Sam's album. That's how much I am really looking forward to.
Yeah, something tells me it's going to be better. Something tells me it's going to be better.
The sound production is good.
Yeah.
And the songs, I'm somewhat familiar with the songs because even though they didn't release a lot of them back in the day, some of them were on the live album, some of them were on bootlegs. So I just really can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
Should be great. Speaking of Billy Sheehan, he recently did an interview with We Go to 11 podcast. He also talked about that he has and is in possession of pro shot video of David Lee Roth's Eat 'Em and Smile tour from 1986. And he said here, I have it. I think I'm the only guy with it. They shot it pro. It's Dave's tour and Dave's business, so I can't do anything with it, unfortunately. At some point, maybe I'll try and get in touch with Dave and ask him, do you want to put this out? I had a pro shot video. I forgot how I have it. As far as I know, no one else has it. I just reviewed it the other day, and backed it up onto 3 drive to make sure I didn't lose it. I'm not sure if it could be out someday, if Dave would be interested in doing it, but I've got it. It's here for him if he wants it. I'll be happy to put it in my Dropbox and send it over to him. But most of the videos that are out there, he says, are handheld and shaky with muffled audio. This one says the audio is good. It's not great, but it's better than most of the handheld camera things. He also said, and for a while I couldn't find it, so I thought, did I imagine that? Am I fooling myself here? But sure enough, he said the other day, there it is, and I got it, and he realized that he had found it. So that was interesting. Now, Dave and I interviewed Billy, Dave, what was it, 3 years ago? More than that, 5 years ago? And he's acting like this is brand new information. We had this on our podcast, I think 5 years ago, where he talked about this, right?
Yeah, he has definitely mentioned it to us before.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to remember when, because we've had him on 3 times.
Yeah.
And I couldn't remember which one. We had him on in 2017. I don't know if it was that one.
I think it was that one.
We had him on after Phil passed away, so that had to be like 2021. And then we had him on somewhere in between. So I'm not sure which episode it was, but I distinctly remember he said, oh yeah, I have it, and it's never leaving my house or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And we practically invited ourselves over. We were like, well, can we come over for a watching party? We'll bring the popcorn.
Yeah.
I remember we had some kind of conversation like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still waiting for my invitation.
I know.
Anyway, I'm not holding my breath for that one. But yeah, he confirmed it back then.
Yeah.
So I would love to see that. That would be awesome.
I have a feeling, though, the thing that's going to hold up from coming out is that the audio isn't great.
Oh,
that's
you know what?
my
okay,
fear.
I get right. I know the audio isn't great. Okay, whatever, but it's still professionally filmed. And there's no professionally filmed version of that tour, shockingly, anywhere. Right. So I'll take men's audio. At this point, we'll take what we can get. That's not what's going to stop the release. Men's audio isn't the problem. It's getting Homala Babala Zebala Bubala to focus for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
And convince him to release it.
Right.
That's going to be the holdup.
I cannot understand how you could pro-shoot something and not have proper audio to go with that. That doesn't make sense.
He didn't say proper. Dave, maybe he has like an older version of it. Maybe it's like a copy of a copy, or like the video for Live Without a Net. I mean, the audio for that is okay, but it's not great. And that's around the same time period, right? That's 1986.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he's thinking. Because remember, he just has one copy of this thing. Who knows? Was it like a duplicate copy? Was it a reference copy? Who the heck knows, right?
Absolutely. You know who I think probably, if anybody has copies of it, is Dave's old manager, Pete Angelis. Because he was a video guy, and he was totally managing Dave at the time. I can't imagine that he doesn't have this. He must have it. I don't know. He must be in a fight with Dave or something. It must be tied up somehow. Anyway, moving on. Wanted to let you guys know a little bit about Michael Anthony. Michael Anthony, who, as you well know, has a side gig as a hot sauce man. You call him Mad Anthony. So he had his hot sauce infused in a beer. So the Alosta Brewing Company, which was in Covina, California, got together with Mike to put out a special chili beer made with his own Mad Anthony hot sauce, and it was released at this chili cook-off on July 30th, and it's called Mad Anthony Ale, and they had an event where they had a chili cooking contest. It was like $15, and you got a flight of chili tasters and also a pint of Mad Anthony Ale. And the portion of the proceeds went to Save a Heartbeat Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that fights to improve the lives of those affected by congenital heart disease, which is a common birth defect worldwide, and which Mike's grandson suffered from, unfortunately, and took his life. But, yeah, can you believe that, Dave? They're putting his hot sauce in a beer now.
That just seems... Wow. I guess that's something you taste once and see if you like it or not.
It's like almost like, how would that taste? I mean, I can't even picture how it would taste.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, it's sort of a weird thing.
Yeah.
So now Dave pointed this out to me, and good for him for catching this. Listen to this. So Dave pointed out Aranthi, which is Michael Jackson's former guitarist. She was also former partners with Richie Sambora. She has put out a single called Light It Up. And Dave said to me, why don't you listen to this? This sounds a little much like Wolfgang's Don't Back Down. So here's a clip of Aranthi's Light It Up. Now here's a clip of Wolfgang Van Halen's from Mammoth WVH, his band, Don't Back Down. The riffs are exact. It's unbelievable. The song is different. The song is totally different. Both songs don't sound the same, but that whole opening is a complete ripoff. I think, Wolf, you got to call a lawyer. Dave, what do you think about this?
Yeah, well, I can't take credit for that because I believe I found it on VH Links.
Oh, okay.
They always seem to dig up all the good stuff. But yeah, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's a little too close for comfort.
That's and also not long ago. I mean, that album came out a year ago.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Dave also pointed out something to me which was unbelievable. So Brian Kehoe, who is the mixer engineer who went into the Van Halen vaults, right? And he's the guy who put together that Van Halen box set that's been sitting on the shelf. So Dave looked up Brian Kehoe's resume on his website. Brian also is the one who denied coming on the podcast, not because he didn't want to speak to us, but because he's been told to stop doing interviews. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He was nice about it and stuff, but he's like, yeah, I got to stop doing interviews. And I'm like, what does that mean? But Dave pointed out that on his resume, the last item on his resume, and he has a resume that really is extensive. He has done work on stuff for the B-52s, to Bette Midler, to Black Sabbath, you name it. Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, Dr. John, Crazy Horse, Chic, my God, who else? Montrose, believe it or not, 1975 with Sammy Hagar, and also the Stooges, Sisters of Mercy, Talking Heads, the Smiths, Tom Waits, Twisted Sister, and the last item on his resume, listen to what it says, outtakes/demos from all Dave Roth albums, in parenthesis, unreleased. So what this does tell you that apparently all of that stuff exists and has been cleaned up and handled by Brian Kehoe. What do you think of that, Dave?
Well, again, I can't take credit for that. I found that from somebody else on the internet, too.
Okay.
So that might have also been VH Links. I'm not sure. The Montrose credit, that doesn't make sense to me because Sam was not in the band in 1970. Well, he certainly wasn't recording an album with the band in 75.
No.
So I'm not sure what that is. But anyway.
It might have been a live thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, either way. But yeah, the fact he worked on an all era, and he says all era. He purposely goes out of his way.
Yeah, he goes out of his way to lay it out.
Not just the first album or the first two albums.
Right.
All era.
Yeah.
And I was like, Yeah, so.
And he makes it a point to say all Dave Roth era albums.
Man, it's just so disappointing that somebody did this work.
I know.
And it is either literally or figuratively sitting on a shelf.
I know. That shows you that he did more than that box set. Warner Brothers must have hired him to go into the vaults, get whatever you can get, clean it up, and then see what's there, and the band must have not approved it. But I would like to know.
Right. I mean, this is my guess. So he goes in, he looks through all the archives for the Roth era, finds a bunch of stuff, And then they go to him and say, okay, let's start with something for the first album. And that they decided to make what ultimately became an unreleased collection. And that's as far as it got. So they never even got, from Van Halen 2 to 1984. But it sounded like he did the homework to get the unreleased tracks for that. Either maybe they were thinking of a whole huge box set for that, and they said, let's just start with the first album, and then that didn't happen either, or who knows. I mean, either way, it's just like, I can't believe he did all this work, and the record company basically had to write it off for nothing.
And when I contacted him to do an interview, I wanted to know, what he found, what's in the Lost Ark. You know what I mean? I know you can't play any clips or this or that, but, how much are we talking about meat on the bone here? Are you talking about one song per album? Is it more than that? I really want to know. So we'll have to see what happens, but I want to say here two things that Dave and I were discussing off the podcast that we wanted to note. There's two artists that are coming out with stuff just like this. Right now, Aerosmith has been digging into their archives. They're doing a whole 50th anniversary thing. They're doing something really cool. They're releasing albums, and they're putting out on YouTube for free for the fans full shows. Full fucking shows from their archives. Gorgeous, clear, beautiful shows. That to celebrate their 50th anniversary, they're putting out some albums coming up. They have a whole series that they're going to be putting out in their archives that Joe Perry talked about on the Eddie Trunk show, and also Joe Strummer from The Clash is putting out a box set. Joe's obviously passed on, but his family is handling it, and it's coming out soon. Al has got to realize there's a window for this stuff, and, it's going to close. The people who want it and care about it and are looking for it, they're all in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, roughly. It's really the time is now to dig into this stuff, to really make sure some of this stuff is going to be taken care of, or else it's just going to go to the wayside. So what do you think of that, Dave?
Oh, yeah, those two bands, that's the way to do it. I mean, that's what fans are drooling over.
Yeah.
But you're right. That window is closing
rapidly.
Every day.
Yeah, every day it's closing. You're right. Every fucking day. Also want to let you guys know about Warren DeMartini, the former guitarist for Rat. Did a big interview with Guitar World, and he did a whole interview with them, which was really cool, but he's heavily influenced by Eddie Van Halen. He said Eddie was sort of the apex of a new direction for guitars of my generation. Everybody wanted to play like him, and every band wanted to hit it big like Van Halen. Now, Rat had become the house band at Gazzari's, which is the same club where Van Halen got their start. He talked about Eddie's sound. He said he had his own style. He had a shuffle that nobody else had, and I was crazy about that shuffle in I'm the One. I think Eddie got some of that from listening to Eric Clapton, and so he talked about the band getting backstage passes for the San Diego show at Women and Children First Tour, and he talked about this funny little story about how he went on stage and got to see Eddie's rig, and they were talking about it, and then while he was watching the show, he had realized that he left his jacket on stage while they were on the stage talking about the rig, and he's like, oh my God, and he said it was right behind the PA systems on Ed's side. So his keys to his car were in the jacket, and he was like, oh my God, I can't lose this jacket. So he took his backstage pass, he went on stage while the band was performing. It was like a scene from a movie. He's kind of like reaching over to try to like inconspicuously grab his jacket. I mean, Ed's playing right there on the stage. And he said he had to climb these stairs to get to stage level, and he saw his jacket like 20 feet away. And he said no one was looking, so I went for it. And halfway to my jacket, I paused, and I looked at the view from Ed's world on the stage, and he said the band was surrounded by this sold-out arena, and Eddie was moving to his left, and for a few moments I got caught in the spotlight, and it was just Ed and me in the spotlight, and right when the monitor guy noticed me, I took a few steps, grabbed my jacket, and left. Which I thought was a funny story, considering that Ed was sort of his mentor and how much he loved Ed and he played like Ed. So what do you think of that, Dave?
That had to be something to see when you're looking at his point of view. But I just find it funny that somehow he got that close to the stage to go get his jacket.
Amazing.
It's like, wow.
Different times.
He must have really liked the jacket.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now he had his keys in the jacket, so he needed those keys to get home. So now, unfortunately, we have some news about Valerie Bertinelli. So she is selling her house because she's in a situation where Tom Vitale, her former husband, is challenging their premarital agreement. He is asking for $50,000 a month in spousal support and $200,000 in legal fees. So that's kind of crazy. Now, Valerie, in turn, is selling her Hollywood Hills home for $2.5 million. So that's pretty crazy. It's a single-level home, 2,500 square feet, and it's got these gorgeous views of the San Fernando Valley. So sad to hear that Valerie's having such a hard time with that, Dave?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do what you got to do.
Yep, that's right. And the last item for Van Halen news is the cameraman Tony Wanamaker recently recounted his experience filming Van Halen's concerts in Toronto at the Molson Amphitheater in August of 1995. So if you remember this was when the band was shooting that special for pay-per-view on the Balance Tour that was originally going to be a home video release but never happened because of Sammy Hagar leaving the band. So Tony Wanamaker, he recounts this in his upcoming book that he's working on called Confessions of a Rock and Roll Cameraman. And he said he filmed Van Halen for the concerts, which were held August 18th and 19th, 1995. He said the plan was for it to be a pay-per-view special leading into a home video release, but obviously because of Sammy's departure, that didn't happen. They had 11 cameramen filming this show. And he says, I was covering Michael Anthony with shots to show Michael Anthony in the foreground, Sammy Hagar a little bit in the back, relationships between the crowd and the pit and Michael Anthony, and then some reverse shots. I could also sneak over and get some really good drum shots of Alex. Wanamaker said his experience with the band members was nothing but positive, and he got a big bear hug from Michael Anthony. He says, I did bond with Michael Anthony. There was a real energy there, a real connection. At the end of the show, I had to shake his hand with my left hand, and I had a camera on my right, and he left for a second, turns around, came back, and it was a really great moment. He picks me up as a big bear hug in the air, and Michael gave me this huge hug, and I'm up in the air floating around like a little doll, and he puts me down, and I thought, man, if that doesn't epitomize a great bond and a professional relationship, I don't know what does. It was fantastic. So good times talking about Mike, and I'm always sorry that show never made it to home video, but, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that is a shame.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, that wraps up Van Halen news.
And that's the way it is. Good night.
And we are on to our interview with Larry White. Larry has worked for Van Halen in two different capacities in two very different ways in both Van Halen eras. He initially was hired by Warner Brothers to do an entire radio special called Runnin with Van Halen, which was used to send out to college radio stations to promote the band's first album. So he did an entire special on the band where he went on the road with the band, interviewed them, and then also got some backstage stuff and onstage banter, put together a whole radio special. And he also, 10 years later, then went on tour with the band for Monsters of Rock with Sammy. And he literally worked with the band day to day on the Monsters of Rock tour. Larry's a very interesting guy, and we got a connection from him through Greg Renoff. So obviously, Greg has all the ins and outs of all the great Van Halen people. But Greg was nice enough to hook us up with Larry. And Larry was a really, really cool guy. Very interesting story. And then as a nice bonus, after our interview with Larry, we're going to play clips from his radio special that you'll get some of the backstage flavor and banter from the 1978 tour of Van Halen backstage. So it's really, really cool. I'm excited about that. But before that happens, they're coming out of the woodwork. People are home during the summer. They got extra time, so they're writing letters. And they want to pack Dave's afternoon here because he doesn't have enough to do. So as the heat gets higher, the letters are piling up, and some of them are even apologizing to Dave as they're writing the letters. because he knows it's overwhelming for him. But that's all coming up.
I hope you got the edit button
That's
ready
right.
to go.
Oh, yes, I've been working very hard on editing these letters. Some of them are out of control. So we'll talk about that in our mailbag segment, and that's all coming up next. Take a listen.
Because we have kind of been pigeonholed as America's premier party band, and we're not. There's much more to us as musicians and the music that we've written.
If you need a dose of VH, get a taste of the closest thing. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band, playing all the hits from the David Lee Roth era, first classic 6 albums plus deep cuts, some of which have never been played live before by the band. They even throw in popular tracks from the Sammy Hagar era and solo hits. The most viewed Van Halen tribute band on YouTube, Romeo Delight, doing customized recreations of staging instruments and costumes from the classic Van Halen era. They even perform entire Van Halen albums in sequence. Romeo Delight plays theaters, casinos, summer indoor and outdoor festivals, and special events. They're also available for private parties. To contact them, call Bud Blanche at 215-704-5144. That's 215-704-5144. Or via email at sonicparade1@yahoo.com. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band. Pick up the new coffee table-sized book, The Decade That Rocked, by legendary rock photographer Mark Weiss. This 376-page book has hundreds and hundreds of full-color photos that Weiss shot through the 80s for magazines like Circus, Faces, and Hit Parader, featuring bands like Van Halen, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, and more. There's even behind-the-scenes stories to go with these colorful, eye-popping pictures. The Decade That Rocked, a new book by rock photographer Mark Weiss, is available for purchase now. Go to thedecadethatrocked.com, where there are exclusive bundles available with extra prints, t-shirts, and even patches. Inquire about the Van Halen bundle, especially made for Dave and Dave Unchained listeners. Order today. The Decade That Rocked. It'll rock your world.
Hi, this is Blair Fisher from Rolling Stone, and you are listening to Dave and Dave Unchained.
The long-awaited Van Halen book from legendary rock journalist Steve Rosen is almost here. Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen. This is an over 400-page odyssey of Rosen's decades interviewing and being friends with the late guitar god, Eddie Van Halen. Rosen says, I spent 14 long, hard months writing Tone Chaser. It was both the most difficult story I've ever written and the most rewarding. I wanted to be honest and transparent as I possibly could, which was not always an easy thing to do. In the end, this was the most complete and comprehensive book I could have possibly written. There was nothing left to say when I reached the last page. With every word I wrote, I was reminded of the time I spent with Edward, and that hurt terribly. But it also brought back what a remarkable experience that was, and how insanely lucky I had been to have ever known him, and astonishingly to have been friends with him. I hope you can feel everything I felt. That is the purpose of this book. Pre-sales are currently going on now for the self-published book. PayPal Steve directly at scrosen@sbcglobal.net. That's scrosen@sbcglobal.net. It's $47 for those who are buying it inside the U.S., and that includes shipping. $95 for those who are buying it overseas, and that includes shipping. Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen. Don't miss out. Order it today. Need a laugh? Check out the Funny How Comedy Podcast, which focuses on upbeat conversations with legendary comedians. It's free on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out on Facebook at Funny How Comedy Podcast, on Twitter at Funny How Podcast, on Instagram at Funny How Comedy Podcast, or email us at funnyhowcomedypodcast@gmail.com.
Well, it's all balance. A lot of times, yeah, I'm up at dawn. I get up at 5, 6. I bring my bicycles with me on the road. I tie the hair up under the hat. And, you can't dress like Little Richard and sail down the middle of Main Street and go, hi, how come they're looking at me, right?
All right, Dave, you know what time it is.
Well, my buddy Dave, he don't want me around. He says he's tired of watching me let him down. He just wants a good mailbag. He wants only the best. But he hates disappointment better than all the rest. And he says that he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble if I don't nail the mailbag intro.
That's right, it's mailbag time again. And we got a boatload of letters on our 80th episode here, Dave. We're going to get right into it. Letter number 1 comes from Jason Haddon from Owensboro, Kentucky. He says, hey, Dave and Dave, I've seen a lot of advancements in artificial intelligence within the arts recently, and AI is creating stunning works of art, and AI has recently been used to create Val Kilmer's voice, who can no longer speak, in the new Top Gun movie by digitizing all of Val Kilmer's past audio from his movies and putting them into an AI program. This got me thinking. In the future, if AI programs were available that could randomly generate or even create user-customized music that sounded like newly recorded music by a band, would you be interested in this? Imagine being able to buy a fully licensed software program approved by Van Halen that would allow you to pick your vocalist, Sam or Dave, and then customize the songs that the AI writes and make them as random as possible. The software would be intended for entertainment purposes only, so to solve the copyright issues or illegal use of the songs created, the songs would be made in the cloud before being sent to the user of the AI app, allowing the original master to be held on file by the software company for DMCA purposes. What do you think? And then he says here, if any band on the planet attempts to be the first to create and market this, my money is on Kiss. Love the show, guys. Jason Haddon from Owensboro, Kentucky. Yeah, Jason, that is a very innovative thought. Although it sounds cool, there's a bit of weirdness to it. I'm not into that kind of fake stuff, recreating rock and roll. Rock and roll can only really be made by actual humans. The thing that we love and the real juice, that is the chemistry between all the guys. And when the 4 guys lock in and create that magic, and then they share it with the audience, and the audience throws back love and affection to them, that's sort of the back and forth parlaying there. That's when kind of the band and the crowd become one, and it's kind of like a sports team vibe, where everybody's kind of wearing the sports gear and rooting on the team, and the team's performing, and the crowd's chanting them on and cheering them for them to score. However, I do think you're right that Kiss will be the first to do it if it is done for sure. What do you think, Dave?
Oh, I won't bet against Kiss.
Yeah.
I think that is a really slippery slope.
Oh, yes.
To go down.
Big time.
Because can you get an artist or a band to make more music by doing it that way?
Exactly.
Yeah, you probably can.
Yeah.
The question, though, really is, should you? I mean, that's probably a philosophical question.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think, as a fan, you always want more, but I'm not so sure that's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's for sure. Letter number 2. Well, I predicted this was going to happen, and here he is.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's Midwest fucking Ron. That's right, Midwest fucking Ron is back. I told you not to rattle his cage, but his cage was rattled. And now he has not written 1, not written 2, not written 3, but he's written 4. He's out of control. So, Midwest Ron, he's on fire this time, Dave. He's on fire. So he says here, it's difficult to convey my feelings about the Van Halen Gold segment in words. I haven't finished listening to the segment yet, but I know I'll have to go back and re-listen to it once I get past the anger and hurt. Then he says here, you felt misled and ripped off by the Lockdown Sessions CD from the Sammy in the Circle. I think I feel a similar way about your Deep Throat episode. Sadly, Midwest Ron. That's his first one, right? Then he comes in and he says, if future guests like Van Halen Deep Throat wish not to have their voice heard on your podcast, might I suggest the following. Run the audio into a speech-to-text capture, then that text back through the text-to-speech converter. And he sent a sample here and says, while this will strip inflections and speech nuances, the full text would be preserved and you wouldn't have to summarize. Midwest Ron. Then he comes back again and he says, as more time passes, my feelings about all this have softened. Obviously, 24 hours of cooling down didn't help, but another 3 days did, and I restarted the segment and did my best to listen all the way through. Even though it may fall on deaf ears, here's a thought about the presentation of the material. You, Dave C., rattle off too many items at a time before pausing to ask Dave M., what do you think about that? Those pauses also act as a break for us, the listeners, to absorb what we have just heard. Even though I already listened to this segment twice, I have to go back in because the information came too fast. I would have liked Dave M. to be more involved. Do you guys listen to the DLR podcast? I haven't listened to episode 64 yet, but they break down your Deep Throat segment. I also found it curious that you seem to find the 2019 tour news all that new. I thought it was public knowledge that the tour has been routed and venues have been booked, or at least reserved. Do we, the Van Halen Collective, have a date or at least a general time frame for when Eddie's motorcycle accident took place? It doesn't get said often enough by me, but thanks for all the hard work. Even-keeled Midwest Run. That's his words, not mine. Then he says here, Dave C., when you dug deeper into the Walmart Van Halen vinyl releases, you didn't look close enough. You said Van Halen 1 and 1984 had significantly different pricing than others. You need to look for the sold and shipped by Walmart.com statement on pages to make sure you're not buying from a third-party seller that has jacked up the prices. And he says here that everything is set at $27.97 or $26.97. That Van Halen 1 and 1984 are $27.97, and that Women and Children First, Diver Down, and Fair Warning are at $26.97. He doesn't mention Van Halen 2 for some reason. For the Live at Selland Arena, Fresno vinyl, it isn't sold by Walmart. The seller is a third party and not Walmart itself. You can buy it on Amazon.com too, but it's also a third-party seller, Midwest Ron. Well, we have got a thick dose of Midwest Ron. He's got his cage rattled. He's completely all revved up, and he's coming at us. So just to take it all down, Ron, I will address each issue. Number one, in terms of transferring the voice, I'm not going through all that for an interview. Plus, I'm not tech savvy enough to do that, number one. Number two, the way this interview was done, Dave and I did not set it up this way. We did not expect this. This was a last-minute surprise. We were working in the moment, so this is the best we could do in the moment. The goal was to get the information to the listener. So the person that was being interviewed was insignificant. Not that the person's insignificant, but whether you knew the person or not is insignificant, because if I said the name of the person, you would not know who that person was. So that's number one. You know, it was a difficult episode to kind of navigate. I'm sorry if it bothered you in any way. I don't think it's fair to compare it to the lockdown sessions. I don't even see the correlation there, because the lockdown sessions, my complaint with that was, I love the lockdown sessions. I think it's great. All I asked for was full songs. You know what I mean? It's not like I was leaving out stuff. I gave you guys everything that was in that interview for sure. So I didn't leave anything out there. I'm sorry that you
I'm also going to add that the person we interviewed really valued their privacy. And so even if we could have done the technology that Ron had suggested, I'm not so sure we would have done that anyway, because we had no problem discussing the information, but we really wanted to respect this individual's request to be private. So I'm not so sure we would have put it through a converter and had their sentences read in another voice, because I'm not so sure that would have been private enough.
Yeah.
So the challenge we really had was getting the information out there and respecting an individual's privacy.
Yeah.
And I think we did that, and I think we struck the right balance.
Yeah.
I understand it wasn't a typical interview, and believe me, like Dave said, we walked in there thinking it was going to be the usual, and we walked out of there going, Well, that was unexpected, but we made lemonade out of lemons, and I thought we had a pretty good episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes you get what you get, and you don't get upset.
Well, I have to say, he's sort of in the minority. A lot of people really loved it, but that's okay, Ron. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. In terms of Eddie's accident, I don't have an exact date, but I think it was somewhere in the winter of 2019. It was somewhere in there, like in February or March, somewhere in there. I think that's where, I don't have an exact date though. Now also, in terms of Walmart, here's the thing about Walmart. If the item is listed on Walmart.com, it's being sold by Walmart. Now, I agree with you. There's a third party, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I get that. But what I'm saying is, if you're as big as an organization as Walmart, and you're featuring bootlegs for sale on your website, that's kind of shocking to me. That's all I was really saying. I mean, I understand that there's a third party in there, but it's just shocking that they would allow the third party on their website. That's kind of like my point, either way. So whether they're selling it or the third party is being featured on their website, it really doesn't matter because it's all under Walmart.com, you know what I mean? So that's all I was referring to. I didn't look at the specifics on that. However, either way, my point is still sticking to that. So thank you, Ron. It's always good to hear from you, even when you're breaking balls, but we love you. You know that. On to letter number 3, Ralph Krugler. And he says, hey, Daves, in reference to your question, have you ever seen 5150 referenced in the movie? The answer is yes. In the 1996 movie Savage, it's used twice by a cop. Honestly, the movie is terrible. I found it to be a Riff Tracks release. If you're unaware, they make fun of really bad movies. All right, so yeah, that might have been the movie, Ralph. Thank you so much for pointing that out to me. I was flipping through the channels like late at night and heard it and jumped off my couch laughing and thought that was cool. But what did you think of that, Dave?
Yeah, never saw that movie. Interesting that it was a reference actually used. So thanks for digging that up.
Yep. Letter number 4 comes from Southeast nice guy Kurt Lenkos. Lawncos.
No.
It's not Lawncos?
Just call him Southeast Kurt, please.
You got it. That's it.
Please.
We're retiring your last name. Southeast nice guy Kurt. Okay? We'll just leave it at that. I just wanted to send a quick note and let you know how much I enjoyed the Deep Throat episode. I know you couldn't reveal the interviewee, but it would have been cool if you could have aired the interview anyway and disguised his voice like they do on those investigative journalism shows when they have the source who doesn't want to be recognized or in the witness protection program. However, that would have been a lot of extra work, and I can see why you wouldn't choose to do that. All the information was very interesting, and I'm glad that the Dave and Dave Unchained listeners are the first ones to be privy to all of the details. One thing I took from it is that Alex must really have struggled the most with trashing Dave on those 1986 PR videos the band did as an effort to solidify Sammy as their new lead singer. It seemed Alex and Dave were always the tightest. Anyway, always well done, and keep up the great work. Let me know if both of you are ever in Atlanta. First round's on me. Stay frosty. Southeast nice guy Kurt. Okay, well listen, Kurt, thank you so much. I really appreciate the kind words. Yeah, you know what's funny? And this is no dig to Midwest Run or anything. I get what he was talking about. But I'm never a fan of when they disguise someone's voice on those shows. I'll tell you why. Because when they do that, I never understand what the person is saying. Like, they disguise the voice so much. It's so distorted. I never kind of understand it. And it's a little hard to follow. And I've even seen that done on podcasts, believe it or not. Well, yes, it is an immense amount of work. I didn't want to do that for sure. But however, it's not my thing, that's for sure. But I appreciate the kind words. And listen to Kurt's Retros S podcast, because I know he loves those plugs. What do you say, Dave?
Yeah, he definitely loves those plugs.
Oh, yeah, he's all about it.
And, yeah, it's just a lot of work to do that. And, we didn't have the technology. And like we said before, we wanted to get the information out as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And we did it the best way we know how. So there you go.
That's right. Letter number 5 comes from Norm Campbell. He says here, outstanding interview with the mystery guest last episode. I had to listen to it 3 times to ingest all the information. The 2 major revelations I walked away with. Number 1, the Holy Grail does exist, and I've always had the feeling they would have rolled credits to the end of the Unchained video if it was just 1 or 3 songs. Someone needs to figure out a way to get Pete Angelus to release a full video or at least a full audio bootleg of the official live album from that era. Number 2, learning how much Dave and Eddie really cared for each other, even though there was brotherly competition, egos, etc. I think that maybe Dave was the only one who really cared enough about Eddie not to take him out on the road in that kind of shape in 2004. That said something about Alex too, at least at that point in time. Keep up the great work. Clearly my number one favorite, Norm Campbell. Okay, cool, excellent. Well, Norm, I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. Yes, you can look at it from different angles. Al clearly loved Ed, still loves Ed. I don't doubt that for a minute. Maybe he felt, in my opinion, that if he got his brother out on the road and he could keep an eye on him and be around everybody, and he has what you call a structured scenario. He's got the road manager, he's got the crew, he's working, the band is performing. It might be a better environment for Ed than for him to be, wallowing at 5150 doing what he does. I think that might have been his thought process. In terms of Dave's thought process, I don't know if it's so much that Dave had so much love and care for Ed. I think Dave might have looked at the band as a car and saying, I don't think this vehicle is going to make it across country. You know what I mean? Like, he had a different angle on it. And I'm not saying that Dave doesn't care for Ed, but he might have looked at it from a business standpoint and being like, I don't know if this is going to work. Like, he just got that vibe. What do you think, Dave?
I think you raised some valid points there.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't in those guys' shoes, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I certainly don't know what Al was thinking. Certainly, I'm willing to bet he was willing to do what he thought was the best thing for his brother at the time. And Dave probably just looked at it and said, I don't think this is going to work, so I'm going to pass. And Dave was very well aware that it would raise his status, his star, his visibility, his bank account, all that stuff. He was very aware and cognizant of that stuff, because even in 1984, when he and Van Halen parted ways, one of the things he said to Ed was, Ed, your brother is drinking like 2 6-packs a day or something like that.
A case a day.
I'm sorry, thank you. A case a day. And that wasn't lost on Dave.
Right.
So he's aware of this and the effect it has on people. And I think, that's not something he ignores in his decision process.
Sure. Letter number 6 comes from Pat Kenny. He says, Dear Dave and Dave, I'll keep this one short and to the point for Dave M's sake.
Thank you.
I listened to the latest podcast and heard Dave C's wishful talk that Wolf Van Halen may actually play Van Halen at the upcoming tribute concerts for Taylor Hawkins, and he was billed only as Wolfgang Van Halen and not Mammoth WVH. I think the most likely scenario is quite obvious. Wolfie will play drums with the Foo Fighters. We know it's his favorite instrument, and the reality is there was an absence of a drummer. So, not to ruin Dave C's wet dreams, could Dave Grohl play a Van Halen song with Wolfie behind drums? That is a possibility. However, knowing Wolfie, I really doubt that he would want to make such an event about him/VH, so I don't really expect it. Keep up the great work. Cheers, Pat Kenny. Pat, that's a really interesting thought. I never thought of that. You guys were coming up with all kinds of interesting scenarios. He could very well play drums for the Foo Fighters. Maybe he plays drums for the Foo Fighters, doesn't play a Van Halen song. That's true. That's the way it could go. Although, to be honest with you, the reason I was thinking possible a Van Halen song is that because in honor of Taylor's side band, Chevy Metal, he used to play a ton of Van Halen songs. So I thought he might do that for Taylor because Taylor was such a huge Van Halen fan. But I'm dying to hear Wolf play Van Halen songs. It's not that I have that. I'm just curious myself because he's not bringing Mammoth there. That's the curious part. He's not coming in as Mammoth playing a set. I can understand that, but you're right. Maybe he is going to play drums for the Foo Fighters. That might be interesting. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, maybe. I think that's a great theory.
That's a great theory. It's a great idea, too. It's also,
I think he might be onto something.
He might be onto something there. Letter number 7 comes from Jeff Cutray, and he says, Hi, Daves. I looked at the Walmart website for the Van Halen vinyl releases with the backstage passes. The prices for the single albums are all $26.97 or $27.97. Looks like they got got the pricing fix. Also, they allow third-party sellers. That's where the bootlegs are coming in. Love the show. Love the length of the show. Makes the workday go much better. Appreciate you both. He also said, I have to agree with Quiet Dave's original take on Spanish Fly being eruption on an acoustic guitar, because Edward himself said the exact same thing in an interview in Guitar Player magazine.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, Jeff Cotre, and he, look at that, Dave, you're getting all kinds of justification tonight. Everybody's nodding to Dave. Well, it looks like you got a supporter in Jeff there, Dave, in your Spanish Fly theory. You are not alone yet. I wasn't aware about the third-party element of Walmart situation, but thank you for pointing that out, like Midwest Ron. I didn't look at the details on that, but yeah, listen, I just don't want people to get ripped off, that's all. Letter number 8 comes from Jeff Shrewsbury, Dave, and he writes in a nice short letter, and everybody's adhering to your strict rules, and he says here, hi, Dave and Dave, hope all is well. The first 24 seconds or so of Trevor Rabin's Eyes of Love sounds a lot like Baluchitherium. What are your thoughts? Well, here's the clip of Trevor Rabin's Eyes of Love. And here's a clip of Baluchitherium from Van Halen from 1985's Balance. Dave, didn't we do this before? I could swear we did this. Didn't we do this before?
We might have.
Yeah.
We might.
Either way, here's the thing. Jeff, thanks for writing in. Jeff's a longtime listener. It's the same intro riff. Then the songs go both in complete different directions. It's similar to the Aranthi song with Wolfgang. The opening riff is right there. Now, let's keep in mind that Trevor Rabin's song predates Baluchitherium. So it came out in 1989, and the Balance album came out in 1995. So I don't know what happened there, but possibly people came up with a similar idea. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, very, very similar riff. I mean, I think it's the same issue we were talking about before with Orianthi. You know, there's so much music out there now that we're at the point where hearing the same thing twice is going to happen.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, after a while, someone's going to have to come up with the same riff. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened in this case. And as you pointed out, the songs go in different directions after that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, they're not even close.
And, you know, I don't know what happened in the Orianthi case because that's less of a gap. So I'd like to think that they came up with the riffs on their own and did different things with them.
The weird part about the Aranthi thing is, forget about Aranthi. Like, doesn't someone around her be like, oh, wait a second, Wolfgang Van Halen just released that song as a single for Mammoth? Like, how does no one say that? She could very well came up with something similar in the writing process and whatever. That happens with comedians a lot. They come up with similar jokes. That happens, but, like, I always wonder is about the people around them. Like, no one raises their hand and be like, wait a sec. Like, you know what I mean? That's the part that's strange.
Maybe they honestly never heard it. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Letter number 9 comes from Hunter Phillips from Charlotte, North Carolina. He says, I was a senior in high school when Van Halen 1 was released. Years later, I got on board, but recently my interest in Van Halen has increased exponentially. And that he said he mountain bikes to the music, and he started working out and losing weight. He ended up losing 65 pounds, and he says, I know this is going to sound corny, but he says, I believe Van Halen changed my life. I listen to their music every day and still do, and there is something about it that makes me feel great and enables me to push myself. There are many days I don't want to ride, but I push myself through this and tell myself I'm going to get to listen to Van Halen today. He thinks we're doing a great job presenting and discussing Van Halen, and he wants to thank us for that. He says, if Wolf does not want to play Van Halen stuff and believes he has no role in promoting or supporting anything Van Halen. That's his prerogative, but it is short-sighted. In full disclosure, I have not listened to 1 second of any Wolf songs. I don't intend to. The artistic integrity is very noble, but it doesn't pay the bills. I'm a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan, and many years ago, Billy Corgan said he was never going to play any of his old stuff, and his new stuff sucks. I wanted to hear his old shit, so I never went to his shows. Amazingly, he now plays a lot of his old stuff at his shows, and his artistic integrity only gets you so far. And he says, in terms of Sam, I know you guys love Sam, but he seems like a bag to me, and his rock and roll road trip solidified my assessment of him. He is a huge self-promoting egomaniac who would ask questions to his guests only to start talking about himself before they can answer the questions. Maybe that is a prerequisite for a frontman of a rock band. Love the podcast. Keep up the great work, Hunter Phillips. Well, Hunter, thank you so much. I appreciate you writing in, and I love that story about Van Halen helping you to lose weight. That's awesome. That's really, really cool that you love the music that much, and it helps you push yourself, move on. It's inspirational and motivating. That's really cool to hear. However, I want you to do me one favor. I want you to listen to Wolf's album, because Mammoth WVH is really awesome, and that album is full of inspiration too. It doesn't sound like Van Halen, but it shouldn't. It's different, but it's amazing. I'm definitely a Pumpkins fan myself. I'm actually going to go see them on October 14th with Jane's Addiction. I never understood artists who won't play their catalog. Now, Wolf saying he won't play Van Halen is understandable. It's not his material. But in terms of Billy Corgan, that's his material. That's his songs. I don't understand that. But he's doing that now. He is playing all his old stuff, and I'm going to see him because of that. And I agree with you. I am now going to see him in the past recent years because he's playing his old stuff. I understand that Wolf doesn't want to play his dad's catalog. I get that. That's understandable. He wants to do his own thing. That's fine. And I do understand your point about paying the bills. So, there's something to be considered there, Dave. What do you think?
Yeah, I would encourage you to listen to Wolf's album, too. I think that'd be a great album to ride your bike to.
Oh, yeah.
And, congratulations on losing the weight and being so disciplined on doing that. I think that's amazing. And thanks for listening to the podcast and all your support. And, yeah, I know Sam is a self-promoting individual.
Yeah.
That he won't deny that. He's very good at it.
Yeah.
What can I tell you? The guy is an entrepreneur, and he's got that entrepreneurial spirit, and he knows how to get stuff out there and get stuff done and get the word out, and that's what he does. So what can I tell you? That's Sam.
That's the truth. Letter number 10 comes from Tom Jones from Gilbert, Arizona. He says, hi, blustery alpha Dave and quiet introspective Dave. Holy shit.
Wow, and the nicknames just keep on coming.
Wow. And you get quiet introspective Dave, and I get blustery alpha Dave. Wow, okay.
Well, normally it's the other way around.
Yeah,
so
I know.
We're getting our pick of complimentary and not so complimentary.
Yeah, you're right.
nicknames.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
We should have really started a log of all these nicknames.
That's right. You're right. We should have. Absolutely. He says, I love your appearance on the Perfect Album Side podcast. Your list was good. Theirs not so much. You're no good. 2 Sammy songs. Here's mine. Album opener, Runnin' with the Devil. Best song on the loaded first album, I think. Number 2, cover, Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Second, Wild Card, Little Guitars. Number 2, the video song, Hot for Teacher. I think this is the most unique Van Halen song. Number 4, Wild Card, Unchained. You selected Mean Street over the song you named your podcast after. Wow, said in quiet, introspective Dave nasally voice. Wow.
Nasally? Yeah, I guess so.
Don't have a nasally voice.
Yeah.
You don't have a nasally voice.
Well, no, I can see that.
Oh, boy.
That's okay. That's
number 5.
But that's the way the rules were.
Oh.
I mean, we would have gladly picked Unchained.
Yes.
But the rules did not allow us to do so with our
You're right.
songs.
I'm going to get to that explaining. Number 5, Sammy's song, Cabo Wabo. And Dave's song would have been And the Cradle Will Rock. And number 6, album closer, Beautiful Girls. Unfortunately, the Sammy and cover requirements meant that it can't be perfect. Hence my alternative selections, which would have made it perfect, one from each of the 6 albums. What could be better? I find it interesting that a Sammy song was made a category on their podcast. I gather that means it's widely accepted that Dave equals Sammy, otherwise all 6 would be Dave songs. What else could it mean? Tom Jones, Gilbert, Arizona. Well, Tom, let me explain. Okay, so thank you for the nicknames. I don't know what to say. I'm absolutely dumbfounded. Okay, so let me explain the situation with Unchained. Dave and I picked Mean Street as the best album opener. That meant we could not pick another song from Fair Warning. I believe Mean Street was selected as their wild card because they picked it, so did we. So you kind of have to play a little give and take game on that podcast in order to put together the album side, because you can't just do whatever the hell you want. You got to kind of bargain. And because we both picked Mean Street and it became their wild card, they picked it as a wild card. That's how it all kind of fell, and we were cool with them picking Running with the Devil as an album opener because we love that too. And because we both picked Mean Street, that became the wild card, and therefore it then blocked off Unchained from coming in there. You have to understand the negotiations that were involved there. No one is not trying to put Unchained in there. It was just a catch situation. Now, having a Sammy song as a category totally makes sense to me because there were various subjects of which they broke the album side into. One was a video, one was album opener, album closer, like that kind of thing. A Sammy song made sense because, Sammy was a significant part of Van Halen, and obviously we don't want to completely leave him out. Dave, my partner here, was thinking about Dave was thinking about sneaking in Balukatherium as the Sammy song, but we thought that would be a cheap shot. And initially, I was thinking about Where Have All the Good Times Gone for the cover, but I think it really got me was theirs, and obviously that's undeniable. That's the best cover for sure. Just picking that one as a fun one. But I loved all your selections, though. I really liked your selections. So that was great, Dave. What do you think?
So life is a negotiation.
Yes.
And so was this podcast we did with them.
That's very much so.
And, their rules are really interesting, but it does limit your choices. And then when you get down to the end, like you said, if we both pick the same song, even if it was different categories, well, that's the one that's going in the pot. So at the end, that's what 4 people came up with as a result of the rules.
Right.
So,
It was,
what are you going to do? Are they the half a dozen best Van Halen songs ever? No. But it's just an interesting challenge they put before us, and we had a great time doing it with them.
Yeah.
And really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, having fun.
Right, it was fun. Letter number 11 comes to Jesse Philpott from Cookeville, Tennessee. He says, "Hey, Dave and Dave, I love the podcast. I discovered Van Halen when I was 8 years old when I found 1984 CD in my dad's collection. For high school graduation, my parents took me to see my first concert, which just happened to be a Different Kind of Truth tour in Nashville in 2012. I feel it's a fantastic album, and I don't understand all the criticism. Do you guys think it would have been less criticized had it been released following the original six-pack in 1985? Keep up the great work. You guys rock. Jesse Philpott in Cookeville, Tennessee." Well, Jesse, that's a really interesting question for sure. Thank you for writing in, and you're obviously a young man, and thank you for listening to the podcast. I really do appreciate that. Possibly, I'd be curious to see how that would work. Now, I'll tell you this much. I think Tattoo and She's the Woman could have been big hit singles for Van Halen at that time. Now, the rest of the album might be a little too aggressive for 1985. What do you think, Dave?
I think it would have been better received for sure if it had been released around the same time as the six-pack. Interesting what you say about the songs and would they have been hits. I mean, almost certainly around that time.
Yeah.
You're right. The album does tend to be more aggressive, especially the middle part of the album. And so I don't know. I mean, it certainly wouldn't have sold better than 1984. I don't know if it would have sold as relatively as little as Fair Warning. The diehard fans would have loved it. So, yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I don't know because I really don't get involved in what ifs too much. But
well, I have a feeling if you use that album, okay, and if you use, let's say, 4 singles, right? If you picked She's the Woman, Tattoo, Blood and Fire, and Stay Frosty as your singles to work with, I think you could have had a really popular album. It wouldn't have been 1984 popular, but consider 1985. People are Van Halen crazy. If you put that album out in 1985, I think that would have done well with those 4 singles as the engine.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Those are great choices for singles to promote the album.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Letter number 12 is quite a deep dive, and I want to tell Dave that I'm editing the living shit out of this, so this is intense. This is coming from Brandon Wall. He's a.k.a. Chocolate Slim, and he says here, I re-listened to the episode of you guys talking about Van Halen 3 back in November of 2016. Let me tell you, it was as painful the second time around as it was the first time around, meaning listening to Van Halen 3. This truly was Van Halen having a bad musical midlife crisis. And I felt it was an Eddie Van Halen solo album without someone to rein him in and pull him back from his self-indulgent urges, whether it be Ted Templeman, Andy Johns, Bruce Fairbairn, or John Shanks. And he says here, without you, sounds like Sammy Hagar having a bad sore throat with a weird special effect on the vocal. One I Want, it's poppy and annoying for my taste. From Afar reminds me of something Foreigner would have done in 1985 or 1987. Dirty Water Dog, piss poor mix, a mesh of Girl Gone Bad meets Everybody Wants Some, but not executed well. Once, I'm sorry, I didn't like this at all. It sounded like something David Bowie should have used in his Black Tie White Noise album from 1993. Fire in the Hole? He says, the first Van Halen song that actually sounds like a classic traditional Van Halen. Josephina, it's okay, but move on to the next song, please. Number 9, Year to the Day. I do not like Eddie's playing on it. Primary, not a traditional Eddie Van Halen guitar instrumental. Sounds like Eddie warming up. Ballad or the Bullet? This is probably the most hardest sounding song of Van Halen 3. Love the groove of the instrumentation. How Many Say I? Sounds like a mix of Lou Reed and Tom Waits. Van Halen 3 is just a sad disappointment for a legendary band. Thankfully, they redeemed themselves with a different kind of truth. Just sounds like a demo that Warner Brothers decided to release as an album. It's too thin sounding. It's not mixed right. We really don't hear Michael Anthony's vocals. The shelved live album, which was recorded at Hershey, Pennsylvania, was pretty good. Even the tracks from Van Halen 3, Without You, When I Want, Fire in the Hole, and Year to the Day sounds 100 times better than the recorded studio version. I love the interview you do with Gary Cherone, though. Keep up the good work, you guys. Stay frosty. Brandon Wall, Chocolate Slim. Okay, Brandon. Well, he's a very opinionated young man. Brandon, I love the passion and detail you have here. I totally get where you're coming from and understand your gripes. I enjoy the album myself. Yes, it's different, but I look at it as sort of an experiment. To be honest, it should have been labeled differently. It should have been an Eddie Van Halen solo album, considering also that Alex Van Halen and Michael Anthony were on 3 songs that we have now found out. But Van Halen 3 is sort of an anomaly. It sort of divides the Van Halen camp, I think. Gary should hold no blame for it. I think he did the best he could, but I love the kind of quirky albums like that. Like, I love Motley Crue's 1994 album. They're also the Generation Swine album from 1997, so that's sort of my thing. I enjoy it, but not everybody has to like it, and I understand that it's not traditional Van Halen, for sure. What about you, Dave?
I certainly appreciate all the effort you put into the letter, so thank you for writing in. I do agree with you. I mean, Ed tried. I'll give him points for trying, but it just wasn't executed very well. I will tell you, one of the things you said, I don't know if you read this aloud, Dave, or not, but one of the things he said was Ballad of the Bullet. He's still not sure what that's about. I would listen to that song. I would look up the lyrics because I think it's very apropos and very applicable now for what's going on.
That's true.
In the world. So I think it's Gary making I guess you can call it a political statement.
Right.
I don't know if he was ahead of his time or not, or he saw the writing on the wall. I like it. I mean, even musically, I like it. I think it's one of the better songs on the album. But yeah, as a whole, you know, we've discussed this a lot. We dedicated a whole episode to it. It just didn't work. It just didn't work, and mostly because there was nobody there telling Ed what did work and what didn't work. So, unfortunately, that's what happened.
Letter number 13 comes from Tampa Tony, and he says, I have to comment on the last few months' podcast. Wow, your secret person had all these questions answered we wanted to know for some time now, and it was simply amazing. You guys did a great job on getting that person to answer so many questions. Now, the big question is, we don't know who it was, but both of you do. All I want to know, considering you know who the person is, are you both convinced they were telling the truth on all those things they commented on? In my opinion, that was the best guest you have had so far on the show to answer those questions that we all wanted answered. I was completely sold on Noel Monk being totally trustworthy and loyal to the band, as he stated in his book and on your podcast. Unfortunately, between your secret guest, who says he was a piece of shit, along with Kevin Dugan, Runnin, who had no comment. It really bums me out that I heard all these negative comments about Noel. Anyway, great job last month on bringing us the Deep Throat episode. Tampa Tony. Well, Tampa Tony, here's the thing. If I said the person's name, it wouldn't tell you anything. I've said that before. It doesn't give you anything to go on, for sure. But yes, we believe the person was 100% honest and straightforward with us. There was no reason for the person not to be. We wouldn't have done the episode otherwise. We also are glad you enjoyed it. And I think the comments on Noel were sad, but he's sort of a black and white type of guy. So you kind of, people either loved Noel or hated Noel, so he was sort of a, guy you can go either way with, but unfortunately he's passed on at this point, so there's nothing you can do about it going forward. But what do you think, Dave?
Noel was very direct.
Yeah.
Noel was a gruff guy.
Yeah.
I could see how he could ruffle feathers. So, people have opinions about other people, and that's all they are. They're just opinions. So, what can I tell you? Noel was a character, at the least.
Yeah, for sure. Letter number 14 comes from Kevin Dealey from San Francisco. He says here, we've learned that your recent anonymous Van Halen insider that absolutely hates Sammy, especially because of the samurai hair section of his book. And that book was an eternal fuck you to Eddie, and I don't see how that level of disrespect could be washed away even with Eddie's condition. While there may have spoken, in my opinion, Sammy is most likely full of shit that it was a love fest between the two before Eddie's death. We know Sammy exaggerates and borderline has lied about things before, and I believe it's possible that he is telling himself / the public this because of his guilt and embarrassment of verbally obliterating the late Eddie Van Halen is too great. It would have been a way of saving face and protecting his brand. And how could he answer questions on why he never previously mentioned their reconciliation? Easy, by saying that Eddie didn't want anyone to know that they were talking. While he may have been telling the truth, I think this story is way more questionable than we acknowledge. And only Alex knows, and hopefully we hear about it one day. Love the podcast. I'm 29, and you're reaching your younger generation of fans. Thank you so much. Kevin Dealey from San Francisco. Well, Kevin, 29, that's amazing. Kevin, yeah, I agree with you. I think Sam reached out to Ed. They probably connected to some degree, but I think Sammy played it up. I think the book read was rough. What can you do? It happened. But Ed might not have told Alex about texting Sam. I think he might have gotten crazy had he known that, but I don't know if it was such a love fest. And it's also kind of strange the way Sammy plays that up and then kind of leaves Mike hanging. That I always feel bad about, because it's like, yeah, I had my piece of it, and his mic standing there yeah.
Right, yeah. And I wouldn't bet against you that Sam is playing it up.
Oh, yeah, totally. Letter number 15 comes from Ron Druck, and he says here, I believe the true magic of Van Halen was made with a combination of Ed and Dave. Ted Templeman said it himself that removing Dave from the equation would have been the mistake of his career. Even Sammy said the first album in 1984 are among the Desert Island discs. I found it absurd when people ripped Dave for the degradation of his voice over the past 10 years. There was always so much more to him as a frontman that could never be replicated aside from his singing. The charm, the swagger, showmanship, sense of humor, bravado, energy, athleticism, creative lyric writing, and engaging storytelling were all inimitable. So I can think of no other band situation where an original singer has been chastised over the aging of his voice to the extent Dave has. I thought he was fantastic in 2008, a little shaky in 2012, and actually improved in 2015, but unfortunately was really wiped out by the final show of that tour. It's damn near impossible to vocally perform versions of songs in your mid-60s at the same level that you were able to knock them out of the ballpark in your 20s. Now, he's had his fair share of troubles, and Sammy's had his fair share of troubles and received zero scrutiny. Would you guys agree that Dave has gotten ripped harder than he deserves for his declining vocal abilities, or do you think it has been warranted? As much as I enjoy the interview with Blair Fisher, I felt he came off a bit harsh and dismissive of Dave. I just found the disparaging takes like his to be, disrespectful. Thanks again for the great podcast. Look forward to picking your brains in the future, Ron Druck. Okay, Ron, well, I think Dave's vocal problem, in addition to his straining, is a lot of ADD. He loses focus and gets distracted on stage, and I've seen him in the past, especially, I would say, in the Vegas residency, or the short residency that it was, and also in 2015, like, he concentrated a bit more on the lyrics and stayed more on point. Sure, he's vocally challenged. There is obviously, if you listen to our Deep Throat episode, there's something going on with him physically that is affecting his voice, and that's only fair to say. We don't know what that is. He's 67 at this point, and, you know, he's older, and all the years of smoking, drinking, drugging, and touring, lack of sleep and all that stuff is definitely going to affect his voice. If there's any other vocalist who has gotten the same kind of criticism, it's definitely Vince Neil from Motley Crue. He gets the same sort of criticism. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, is it unfair? I don't know. I mean, if you're a lead singer and you're having issues singing, I think any criticism, like constructive criticism, is fair game. I don't see an issue with that. There is more to Dave as a frontman than certainly his singing ability. Absolutely. Some people can sing great and they're boring to watch. That's definitely not Dave.
Yeah.
But in the last few years, Dave's had the opposite problem. He's great as a frontman, but singing, he's not always at his best. And that's being kind. Though I will say the last two shows, which were the ones we saw in the Vegas residency, he was pretty good.
Yeah.
And he was definitely finding his stride when he was opening up for Kiss before the pandemic shut him down.
Yeah.
And everybody down, for that matter.
So
bad. That's really the sad part, is that vocally he had found himself again and was really sounding good. But then the pandemic just shut that down. So unfortunately, he really didn't have a chance to prove himself for too long. And that was the lost opportunity there.
Sure. Letter number 16 comes from Eric Torbick, the perfect letter writer from New Jersey. And he says, "What's up, guys? Great podcast as always last month. I think Blair might have hinted he'll need your help with his book to fill out the history blanks when he writes it. You'll be a great source for sure. Curious about your take on the Circle playing Ain't Talk About Love and Unchained. While I think it's awesome, I noticed Sam completely leaves the stage during the song. I know it's designed to highlight Mike and give Sam a break, but is it me, or does it seem weird Sam leaves the stage? Like, Sam has to have his petty, I'm not performing a Dave song moment. Love to hear your thoughts. Rock on, Eric Torbick, perfect letter writer from New Jersey. P.S. The Easter egg is Tokyo 1978. Those Japan bootlegs are a must-listen for any Van Halen fan. Arguably the best shows from the 1978 tour." Wow. Okay, well, Eric, you're always on point with your letters for sure. To be honest, I think Sammy and the Circle playing Ain't Talk About Love and Unchained is a little bit of a waste, a little bit cheesy. I'd rather see them do some deep Van Hagar tracks like Judgment Day, Mine All Mine, Seven Seals, Summer Nights. Mike's voice is not really suited for those songs. Basically, it's sort of a cheap stunt to own some of the old VH material and give Sam a vocal break, and it kind of becomes more of a crowd sing-along. So it's sort of like a moment in the show, which I guess is nice, but at the same time, I would much rather them focus on doing some cool Van Hagar songs, because that's really where Mike and Sam lock in and sound great. Now, yes, nice guess on the Easter egg. You're correct. Another perfect letter. Thank you so much. Do me a favor. Please tutor Brandon Wall. We need you to tap into Brandon Wall. He's literally writing like essays at this point. So what do you say, Dave?
Actually, I'm pretty sure I said the same thing to you when we saw Sam recently and they were doing Ain't Talk About Love.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I said to you, I'm like, look at that. He can't even stay on the stage for the song.
I know.
He can't even sing background vocals for it. He just can't. Just can't do it.
Well, maybe it's a break. Maybe he needs the break.
You know, he's definitely throwing Mike a bone with that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's being respectful and all that. I think it's very interesting that, yeah, sure, it's also designed for Sam to take a break, and that's fine. But good Lord, dude, you can't even get yourself to stay on stage while Mike sings a song that Davey Lee Roth sang. You can't even do it, can you, Sam? You can't even be the bigger man. Can't do it. It's so petty. It's just another example of the ego and the dysfunction with the members of this band.
Oh, yeah, it just continues.
You know, it just makes me chuckle.
It just continues. Letter number 17 comes from Robert Burton. He says, I heard enough already of the Hot for Teacher drum intro debate, but for the record, Ted's wrong, Ed's right. The Lamborghini is clearly on Panama. There was no sampling of the Lambo onto the Simmons for Hot for Teacher. It's just the sound of the Simmons drums, the way they were played. There's plenty of YouTube videos of people playing close enough renditions of the intro for it to be apparent that this was drums and not a car. Here is one guy. Now here's a clip.
What's up, everyone? This is a short video on how to play the drum intro portion of the song Hot for Teacher by Van Halen. This video just deals with the drum intro portion of the song only, although once you can play that, you can probably play the rest of the song. But I broke it down into 5 sections that sort of made sense to me, where he kind of is repeating patterns and things like that. What I did to learn it was I played each section through. I slowed it way down, of course, first. You have to slow it way down. It's at 250 beats a minute, I think, or something. And so it just goes by so fast. So slow it way down. I would play each section with just the hands first. If there was kick drums going underneath, I just didn't worry about that at first, just so I could figure out the coordination that was involved with the hands. And then I would add the feet in after that, and of course that set me back, and that would take a while to learn, but that's kind of how I learned it, so that's how I'm going to go through it for this video. And the whole thing is played on like a low floor tom or a low Simmons pad. So I tuned this pad to try and sort of emulate what his sound is. And then he has a rack tom that he plays accent notes on. And then in the Superior Drummer Core library, I found a Simmons kick drum that seemed to sound pretty close to what he has going on in that original. And the whole thing is a triplet feel. So it's counted as triplets end to end to end, basically. So 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into, but at 250 beats a minute, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, you know, I can't even count that fast.
So, yeah, well, I get what you're saying, Robert. I agree. I believe this guy describes it best in all the clips that I've heard, and perhaps this will put the issue to rest. Dave, what do you think?
Who the heck knows at this point? This is like going to be one of those things. It's going to be the great debate that goes on forever.
I know.
I mean, Ted was there.
Yeah.
So unless his memory is really faulting him, he was there.
Okay. Letter number 18 comes from Mark Lance, and he says, great episode, FYI, on Sammy's song Loud. He didn't write it. John Eddy wrote it in 20 minutes in a hotel room one day just for Sammy. And he has also written for Kid Rock on Low Life and 40, amongst other songs. John Eddy's bass player is Kenny Aronson, who is also Sammy's bass player in Hassas. Enjoy. Now here's a clip of John Eddy playing Loud. Well, I tell you, that's interesting, Dave. I guess Sammy was looking for a hit, and shame on the Red Rocker. He went out and shopped for a song instead of writing one himself. What do you think of that?
Yeah, good catch. I did not realize that Sam did not write that. So thank you for the correction. We appreciate that.
Letter number 19 comes from Daryl Elber, who's a longtime listener of the podcast. He talks about, I'm a big fan of David Coverdale and Jimmy Page album. I think grunge was peaking at the time of its release, and it hurt it from really taking off. Arguably the best the both have ever sounded. The album was killer production too. I'm hearing of a 30th anniversary deluxe version coming out. Daryl Elba. Well, Daryl, I've been hearing about that 30th anniversary package for years. Next year is the 30th anniversary. I'm hoping those rumors are true. I'd like to see a remastered album with bonus tracks as well as an official live album from the Japan tour. And I actually told David Coverdale that myself. directly when I interviewed him many years ago. I must have been 5 years ago that I interviewed him about the White Snake Purple album that came out. It's a really good album. But I'm a little pissed at DC, Dave. You want to know what he did? From the last time I was on the podcast, he
canceled his tour.
He canceled his tour. Son of a bitch.
I saw that.
You almost predicted it. You were like, you better keep an eye on that show. And I was like, oh no, he's going to come to the States. It's his last final tour. And you're like, I don't know about that. He's been canceling dates in Europe left and right. And I was like, oh, DC would never let me down. We both have the same initials. And I don't know about that. And motherfucker, he screwed me. So what are you going to do? That's all part of it. Anyway, now we've come to the last letter of the night, Dave's favorite part of the evening, letter number 20. Well, the letter is from Ben Levy, and he says, there's a little taste of Top of the World in Eddie Van Halen's guitar solo during the US Fest around the 56-minute, 27-second mark. Here's a clip. This is something I've never noticed before. Ben Levy. And yeah, it's a nice catch, but let's remember something. Top of the World came from the end of Jump. And at the time of the US Festival, the band was recording 1984, so Ed was probably tooling around, keeping Dance the Night Away interesting for himself. Dave, what do you think about that?
Maybe. But yeah, I did hear that part of the song in the solo, but I felt like we knew that already, because wasn't the end of Jump the riff he's kind of snuck in there, the riff also for Top of the World? Am I thinking about the same song? Is that right?
What do you mean? He snuck in Jump?
No. Like at the end of Jump.
Yeah, he snuck in. That was my whole point. At the end of Jump.
Right. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Right. I'm agreeing with you.
And if you remember, in the Fuck Tour, they played Jump into Top of the World. Remember that?
Right, yeah, one followed the other.
Yeah, one followed the other, which was smart. Well, that wraps up the mailbag segment. And we are on to our interview with Larry White, a man who worked for Van Halen in 1978 during the Dave era. He did a radio show called Runnin with Van Halen for Warner Brothers Records to promote the first album. And 10 years later, worked for Van Halen during the Sammy Hagar era as a full-time guy on the Monsters of Rock tour. And he gives us all kinds of tales about both eras. And we're going to follow that by clips of him interviewing Van Halen from his radio special from 1978. And that's all coming up next. Take a listen.
Trump becoming president because Obama made fun of him, that would be like, imagine if the head of linguistics at Rutgers made fun of David Lee Roth. And then David Lee Roth is like, I'm going to take your job, zibbly bobbly boop. And then he spends a year and all this money, gets the job, goes cartwheeling into the linguistics department. Yeah, head of linguistics, everybody, Diamond Dave. Bring out the coke and the hookers. And then the guy's like, oh no, we're going to be talking about the lack of recursion in 16th century Germanic poetry. And Dave's like, Humbly bibbly zibbly bubbly hum. No? Nothing? Not okay, that's fine.
Pick up the new book, Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, by Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill. These music journalists share with fans new and old alike a candid, compulsively readable, and definitive oral history of the most influential rock guitarist since Jimi Hendrix. It is based on more than 50 hours of unreleased interviews they recorded with Eddie Van Halen over the years, most of them conducted at the legendary 5150 Studios at Ed's home in Los Angeles. The heart of Eruption is drawn from these intimate and wide-ranging talks, as well as conversations with family, friends, and colleagues. In addition to discussing his greatest triumphs as a groundbreaking musician, including an unprecedented dive into Van Halen's masterpiece 1984, the book also takes an unflinching look at Edward's early struggles as a young Dutch immigrant unable to speak the English language, which resulted in lifelong issues with social anxiety and substance abuse. Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, also examines his brilliance, who changed the face of guitar manufacturing. Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen. Get your copy today on Amazon.com. Check out the new podcast, The Rock Quarry, your place to hear in-depth interviews with some of rock's most colorful characters, with your host, entertainment journalist David J. Criblay. The Rock Quarry is available for free on Spreaker and iTunes. You can check us out on Facebook at The Rock Quarry Podcast, on Twitter at Rock Quarry Pod, on Instagram at The Rock Quarry Podcast, or email us at therockquarrypodcast@gmail.com. Hello, loyal listeners. Wanted to let you know about our new Patreon. If you like what we do and you have the means, drop us a donation to keep the podcast going. Go to patreon.com/DD Unchained. That's patreon.com/DDUNCHAINED. Any size contributions are greatly appreciated. We have special packages to those who donate $45 or more. You'll get the Unchained package. Trust me, it's worth it. Contribute $65 or more and you can get the Romeo Delight package, which is Unchained plus more. $95 or more scores you the Top Jimmy package, which is the kitchen sink. If you're a Van Halen hardcore and listen to this cast, this is stuff you'll appreciate. It's ear candy. Those who want one of the packages simply email ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com. That's ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com to make arrangements. What is understood need not be discussed.
Hi, this is Stuttering John Melendez, the most popular person on the Howard Stern Show and the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and you're listening to Dave and Dave Unchained. Yeah.
Martin Popoff here. Hope you're enjoying this latest episode of Dave and Dave Unchained, the wise swamis on all things VH. Just wanted to remind you that at martinpopoff.com, I've got 2 Van Halen books that I wrote. One is Van Halen, a visual biography, which is basically a big hardcover coffee table book, 400 images, 20,000 word detailed timeline. And the other one is called Unchained, a Van Halen user manual. It's the sort of 120,000 word, very academic, a lot of crazy chapters, a lot of trivia, wordy book that I did on Van Halen. So yes, go to martinpopoff.com. I sign and ship those out of my office here in Toronto. There's PayPal buttons for the US, international, and Canada. Again, Van Halen, a visual biography, and Unchained, a Van Halen user manual. Back to Dave and Dave. If you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com. Author Greg Renoff is back with a new book, Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music. The new biography of the record producer Ted Templeman, who went on to produce Van Halen, the Doobie Brothers, Van Morrison, Aerosmith, Sammy Hagar, and more. The book, which runs $19.95, and it's currently available at Amazon.com. From the man who brought you Van Halen Rising comes Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music, written by Templeman as told to Greg Renoff. Available for only $19.95 at Amazon.com. Order it today.
You get what you'll see on the videos, you get what you hear on the record, but you get a whole lot more. It's not laser beams. It's not hydraulics. When you buy a toy and you have somebody set up your toy in the corner and stand there and say, hey, what do you think of my toy? You know what your answer usually is. What you need is some simple things that take people to operate them. So we have a boxing ring. We set that up, and without giving away the whole the whole trick here. A boxing ring mysteriously appears, and when you put a boxing ring in front of an audience, well, obviously, hey, what's it doing in my show? There's a little sense of humor there. But you combine it with an unpredictable kind of music and hit it with the right kind of lights, and you do it with your own finesse. It has a very jarring effect, and it's not the one that you might expect.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an incredible guest this evening. He is a man who did a radio program back in 1978 for Van Halen's first album, and then 10 years later went on tour with the band for the Monsters of Rock tour. It is Larry White. Larry, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Happy to have you, man. Well, listen, we wanted to start off by asking you, when did you first see and hear Van Halen, and what was your initial impression of the band?
Yeah, my recollection, I was working at KHJ Radio in Los Angeles. I was the promotion director there at the time. I had some friends at Warner Brothers, one being Carl Scott, who was in the artist relations department and was a big supporter of Van Halen. He actually managed a band called Harper's Bazaar in San Francisco that later signed to Warner Brothers, and Ted Templeman was in that band. So Carl had a really close relationship with Ted, who of course signed Van Halen. Carl invited me to see them, and if I remember correctly, it might have been a high school in Pasadena, but I think it was the Pasadena City College. I'm not sure. But that's the first time I saw them. Now, that was before the record came out. And then when the record was about to be released, Carl asked me if I would produce a radio special for Van Halen. And I said, I'd be honored. It'd be great. And came up with the concept. My idea was to go out on the road with the band and do some live recording. And Warner's kind of liked the concept, but it's a new band, and they wanted to sell the record. So what they wanted this radio special to do was expose the record in the song order of the album. So the compromise was that I went out on the road for a couple of days with the band. I went to Cleveland and St. Louis and hung out with them backstage, was in the dressing room, really just trying to get that magic moment on tape. I had a stereo Nagra tape recorder, portable recorder with me, and recorded the intros and outros of all the live performances. So I got David Lee Roth, some of his stage patter, and again, the intros and outros and audience response. And then for the radio special, just mix that in at the beginning and end of each song. So it kind of sounds like it's live. That's the concept, but it was really, the album. And it's called Runnin with Van Halen.
What did Warner Brothers do with the special? Where did it air?
At that time, those radio specials, they sent them out on reel-to-reel tape. I think it was 2 reels, 2 10-inch reels, if I'm not mistaken. And
gotcha.
It seemed like it was expensive, and they sent those out they had a network of college radio stations that Warner's regularly promoted to. So I know it went to college radio, and I think it went to some secondary markets. I believe it was just given to the promotion department to do with what they wanted. But there was more of an organized effort to expose it to college radio.
Right.
So when you interviewed the band at that time, what were your initial impressions of the band?
I love those guys, man. They were just the nicest guys. And, they went from a garage rock band kind of, just that were definitely ambitious, kind of felt like they caught their lucky break. And, of course, David Lee Roth was David. And when I did the interview, I wanted to get all 4 guys. The way we did it, Cleveland was the first show. And I, again, hung out in the dressing room and got to know the guys a little bit. And then the next day, same thing, did the show. And then it was after the show in St. Louis where we went to a big hotel suite and, sat around in some cushy furniture with a table and a microphone in the middle. And the idea was to have a conversation with the band. Well, the band was all there, but it was pretty much a conversation with David Lee Roth. Fortunately, Eddie managed to get a word in occasionally, and I was able to use that in the special.
So now, in terms of the band, these guys were really young at this time. Did you get the feeling that they already had a sense of stardom about them, in the sense that they had already achieved kind of a lot of local notoriety in California? David Lee Roth kind of carried himself like he was a rock star to begin with. Did you get that vibe from them?
Well, I got that vibe from David Lee Roth.
Okay, okay.
But not in any kind of an arrogant way.
Right.
It was just he loved the limelight.
Right.
He was a front man, and he wanted everybody to know it. And he's a great performer. I don't want to gossip. Everybody knows the stories, the conflict between David and Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was David could just be a little over the top, and it annoyed Eddie at time to time. And I got that from the very beginning. You could see that was going to happen.
That was also, I think, kind of the spark of the band, was the rub between Dave and Eddie. And Dave had really brought out a lot of the relatability with the band to the people. Like, a lot of people really attached themselves because of Dave's personality and humor and pizzazz and a way to entertain. And then, of course, Eddie provided the unbelievable musicianship.
I thought the chemistry was incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty palpable.
The personalities clashed at some point, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, like in all great partnerships, I guess. But in terms of the personalities in the group, the other guys, Alex and Mike, were they very, very quiet?
Again, going back to that first time in 1978, they were pretty quiet, certainly compared to David Lee Roth.
Right.
David was just such a front man and so eager to talk and answer all the questions. I mean, I suppose as the producer of the show, I could have said, okay, Alex, let's talk to you for a minute.
Right, yeah.
I didn't do that. I just kind of let the guys do what they did. I mean, we had a conversation. I'm not part of that conversation in the finished special.
Right.
It's all coming from the band. I was just trying to give them questions for them to talk about, things for them to talk about. So we heard their story from them.
And how much time did you spend with them? The special itself is about 50 minutes and change. How much time did you spend backstage with them, interviewing them to capture what you got?
Not a whole lot. 2 nights in the dressing room before the show. So, I don't know, maybe a total of an hour at the most, I would think, backstage. Okay. And then the interview itself that I did with them in St. Louis in the hotel room was probably a little over an hour.
Okay. You also got some cool backstage moments, the band going on to the stage, coming off the stage. Was that also part of your perspective for your special, that you wanted to get some of that energy from the band, what it's like for them to go out onto the stage or to come back off the stage?
That's exactly what I was going for.
Okay.
And those are all real moments.
Yeah.
I walked to the stage with the band, holding a microphone, and tried to capture whatever they said. And then when you hear the crowd, the roar of the crowd as they take the stage, that's all real.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are all real moments.
And what was your dealings with Marshall Burl, Van Halen's original manager, like?
Man, I love Marshall. So what a sweetheart he was. Still is, I hope. Is Marshall still alive?
I think he is. Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
He was just a wonderful guy. Gosh, my first dealing with Marshall happened when I was right out of high school, when I was promoting shows up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I believe he was the agent for the association. And I booked them for a concert I did with them, Van Morrison's first group. And that's when I first met Marshall. And I was a pretty young kid. I was right out of high school. And then fast forward to 1978, which is 12 years later. I graduated high school in 66. I met Marshall. He remembered me.
Wow.
I remembered him. And when we went on this trip to Cleveland and St. Louis to do the radio special, it was Carl Scott from Warner Brothers, Marshall Burl, and myself flying in first class to those cities. And, we weren't on tour with the band. We met the band in each of those cities. I think most of your listeners are pretty well informed about who Marshall was. If not, anyway, he was Milton Berle's nephew. And Marshall did the greatest close-up magic. And he had the flight attendants. And in those days, flight attendants were stewardesses. There weren't any male flight attendants.
Right, of course.
1978.
Yep.
And people were smoking cigarettes and, other things. But anyway, we had all the attention up in first class of the stewardesses with Marshall entertaining them with close-up magic, entertaining all of us with close-up magic and telling his stories. Wow. Yeah, unfortunately, they parted ways. Have you guys ever discussed that story?
Yeah,
What's your understanding of the story?
Everything I know is secondhand information from the people at Warner Brothers at the time. It was shortly after I finished doing the radio special that Marshall was fired. And what I heard was, I guess he had a Super 8 film camera, I believe. And maybe he had a video camera or something. And on one of the tours, there was some sexual escapades happening from, in the hotel rooms or something that he documented and then took it around. I'm pretty sure it was Super 8 film. I don't think anybody had. Maybe it was video. Anyway, whatever it was, he took it around and showed some of the people at the office, at the Warner Brothers office. Why he would do that, I don't know. He thought it was funny. He was showing what rock and roll was at those days. I don't know. But the band got wind of it, and I'm told that they went to Marshall's office after hours and broke in and stole their files.
Wow, that's incredible.
Unceremoniously fired Marshall Burl, and that was the end of that relationship right then and there. They needed a manager, and Noel Monk was an incredible tour manager, and they had a close relationship and felt that maybe he could take the reins, and Carl Scott gave it his endorsement, and Noel Monk became Van Halen's manager.
Who was Carl Scott?
At that point in time, he was director of artist relations at Warner Brothers Records, and then he went on to run that department after Bob Reger succumbed to cancer in the mid-'80s, and he became senior VP of artist relations at Warner Brothers.
And how would you describe the band's dynamic with Marshall? And how would you describe how the band's dynamic changed when Noel became their manager?
I wasn't close enough at the time to the band on a daily basis, and other than just doing that radio special, that was it. So I couldn't really tell you. I didn't see Marshall around the band that much, When we were in the dressing room, I wasn't really paying attention to Marshall. In fact, I think I might have just told Carl and Marshall to stay away. I think I did. I think they stayed out of the dressing room, so it was just me and the band, and then whatever normally occurred with Noel, the tour manager.
At the time, were there palpable tensions between Roth and the band? Could you see that there was a tension even early that on?
No, I didn't see that. I didn't see any evidence of that.
Okay.
I don't think there really was. If I noticed anything at all, it was just that the other guys would have liked to speak. You know what? I think at that stage, and then again, fast forward 10 years when I saw him again, there was a big difference. David Lee was gone. That was a big difference. But Eddie was a lot more forceful, a lot more, I think in the early days, Eddie was pretty shy. He spoke with his guitar. He was a real friendly guy who wanted to, hang out and visit. And that's the environment that I tried to create for the interview that I was doing. But David just took over, and David always took over. And I just suspect that it got old after a while already. Just said, damn it, I'd like to get a word in. So
well, yeah.
If I felt anything at all, it was a little bit of that.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because I've interviewed Dave before, face-to-face. And you don't interview Dave. You just tape and listen to Dave.
Exactly.
It's pretty much you press play on the record and you just sit and watch him, talking. And I have asked him direct questions, and he'll just answer whatever he decides to answer. He's not necessarily answering the question you gave him. He's just saying whatever's off the top of his mind. I also found it interesting. Did it surprise you that he was so young and yet so press savvy at the time? Very often bands of that age are not very press savvy. They don't really know how to speak to journalists or to radio personalities, and they don't come off all that together. But Dave always just was right on the money with his rap.
Absolutely. He was just so confident, overconfident, if you will.
Yeah.
So he's like a press man's dream. Are you guys watching Pistol on Hulu?
Actually, I've been wanting to start it. I haven't gotten a chance to start it because my work has been so intense. But is it good?
It's incredible.
Wow.
And I went on to manage John Lydon after the Pistols. I managed Public Image Limited for a couple of years. I was their tour manager in 1980. As somebody who spent a whole lot of time with John Lydon, and I've seen him portrayed in other films and things, and they never get it right. And I wasn't expecting much, and I was blown away.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, how did they get this so right?
Yeah.
Because it's based on Jonesy's book, and he's one of the executive producers. He was there.
Right.
And, you could say, hey, John was like this.
Right.
And he really was.
That's funny.
So what people are going to think a lot of it's really over the top, and most of it is not.
That's funny. That's funny.
And Noel Monk, I think when you get down to like episode 5 or something, they have a Noel Monk character.
Oh, wow.
And the guy that they got, he looks just like Noel Monk.
Wow.
He doesn't sound anything like Noel.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Noel was one of our past guests. He's been on multiple times on the podcast. Obviously, he's passed on at this point. We used to have a lot of fun with Noel. He was quite the character.
The way I became Phil's manager, I had left KHA Radio, went to MCA Records doing artist relations, and left MCA and wasn't sure what I was going to do, and was on my way to the Grammys with Carl Scott and Georgia Bergman from Warner Brothers, and they were trying to find a tour manager for this new band that Warner's had And they kept telling me it's like the new Sex Pistols.
Right.
And they're called Public Image Limited, and I could never remember the name. And they said they're trying to hire a tour manager. They got a tour, and they couldn't find anybody that would take the job because John had such a bad reputation. So anyway, I said, hey, I'll do it. So I got the job. And one of the requisites was that I meet with Noel Monk so Noel could debrief me on what it's like working with John. And, so he did. He was telling me about Sid. Now, Sid wasn't part of Phil. And he said that there was some instance where Sid was giving him a hard time. And he said he just punched him in the stomach. And that's not really how I work. But that's what Noel said. So in this Pistol series, it's a 6-part miniseries on Hulu, there's a scene where Sid confronts the bodyguard and there's a big fight. So
oh boy.
Noel told me about it one way, and it's portrayed a different way in this series, but that is the moment with Noel Monk.
Well, do you remember what Noel used to have on the backstage passes, the logo? Do you remember when he was managing Van Halen? He used to have WDFA, which stood for We Don't Fuck Around. Which is great.
You know what inspired that?
What's that?
Was TCB from Elvis, Taking Care of Business.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Right, exactly.
He learned from the best. He was emulating the Colonel.
Of course.
The Colonel.
The Colonel. Do you want to be a star, Mr. Presley? So now, tell me, you ended up working for Van Halen 10 years later on the Monsters of Rock tour. How did that come about?
So I had done a lot of projects with Warner's, various projects, the radio specials. For example, the first one was the Van Halen. And then I produced some, like the premiere party for La Bamba. I think that was before Van Halen. Anyway, and it does, whatever. I mean, I knew these guys at Warner Brothers, Carl Scott, Larry Butler, guys that were working with Van Halen, and they knew me pretty well and knew my background as a manager, as a tour manager, and so forth and so on. And this big tour, Van Halen's Monsters of Rock tour, was about to go out on the road. And Ed Loeffler, manager of Van Halen, insisted that Larry Butler, who was the vice president of artist relations, go out on the road with the band for the summer. And Larry did not want to, he's married, he's got other bands to look after. He couldn't put all of his attention into one band, even though he had worked with them from the very beginning. In fact, if you go back 10 years earlier, it was right about the time that Larry Butler was hired, and his job was artist relations, college radio.
Right.
So they called me and asked me if I would do it. And I said yes. So then they had to convince Ed Loeffler that that was a good idea. So I had to go meet Ed Loeffler at his offices in Century City. So Larry Butler and I made the trek over there. And I mean, it was like a job interview in a way, or, the commander, Ed, was dressing me down like, yeah, so, what makes you think you can do this?
Right.
Kind of his attitude.
Right.
And then, so we finished the interview, and then he called Chris Pollin, who was the tour manager, and called Chris into the office to meet me. And we met. Chris was great. I loved all of those guys. It took a while to warm up to Ed, and it took a while for Ed to warm up to me. But he gave me 2 weeks. He told Butler, he said, okay, this guy's got he said this in front of me. I'll give this guy 2 weeks, and if I'm not happy, you're going on the road. And Larry Butler agreed to that.
Wow. That's incredible.
And the first 2 weeks, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. It got a little rocky at one point.
Wow.
We were doing, I don't know what it was. And I never said to Ed Loeffler, like, actually, I knew the guys back in the beginning and I produced this radio special. I don't know if he ever knew that I ever produced a radio special.
Sure.
We never talked about it.
Right.
I don't think anybody would have told him. I don't know why they would.
Right.
And I don't know if the band remembered me from those days.
Sure.
We never talked. I never said, hey, Eddie, remember I never did that. Anyway, there was one point early in the tour. I was talking to Ed. I was talking to one of them or something. Loeffler came up to me and said, hey, don't talk to my band.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. That's kind of my job here on this tour, but okay. So, and then it was like the next night, I think, and the next day we were in Pittsburgh with MTV. And there was an MTV contest winner that at one point is going to run on stage and sing a song with the band, So Chris Pollin said, hey, Larry, and he tells me what's happening. And he said, go tell the band. So I went into the dressing room trailer, and I've got the 4 guys were like, it was like a football huddle, they're all around, all listening to me, as I'm telling them this story. And Ed Loeffler walks in and makes eye contact with me, and it's like, he uses motions for me to come here. Well, I stopped talking, and I walked with Ed Loeffler, and never finished the story with the band as to what was going to happen on the stage. And as we're walking out, Loeffler says, I told you not to talk to my band. He says, if you do this again, we're going to have a fight.
Wow.
And just like that. And I said, yes, sir. And then that night after the show, we all go to the bar. And Ed Loeffler actually apologized to me. He said, Chris told me that he told you to do that. And from that point forward, I could talk to the band. I was in the limo going back to the hotel every night. Became part of their party.
What was your official role with the Monsters of Rock tour? How would you describe, what was your title? What was your role?
Well, I was doing artist relations on behalf of Warner Brothers. I mean, I did a lot of things. As it was one big family, the production team, and I kind of became a part of that. But I was paid by Warner Brothers, and the job was to make sure that all the Warner Brothers reps and the radio station people and everybody had their guest passes were ready and that they were taken care of. And
right.
I would escort people to the right place. And then when it was showtime, I was the guy that got all the press photographers together and escorted them into the pit.
Okay.
And then kicked them out of the pit when it was time for them to leave after the first 3 songs.
Okay.
And then I did the band's meet and greet, and we had 30 contest winners in every city.
Wow.
And there was a whole system as to how I did that. And I would get the band in and out between, it would take 10 to 15 minutes, and they saw everybody, got pictures with everybody, and they're done. But I gave every group numbers. People are a contest winner, it's usually 2 people. In some cases, it might have been 4 people for some reason, or, And so I would assign groups. So you're group number 1, you're group number 2, you're group number 3. When group number 1 is here, group number 2 is on deck. Okay, and then keep it going like that.
Right.
So we did it like that. Yeah, it worked like a charm.
How would you describe the contrast of the band from the late 70s with Roth to the late 80s with Hagar?
Well, it was night and day with the operation. I felt that the band members all felt like true, genuine equals, and there wasn't any one person stealing the spotlight.
Okay.
And that's what happened with David Lee.
Right. What was Hagar like?
Very personable, somewhat aloof. I never really got close to Sammy. I mean, we rode in the limo every night together and stuff.
Right.
He knew who I was. But Alex and Michael and Eddie, and I really felt the camaraderie with those guys. They were friends.
How would you describe the dynamic between the brothers?
Positive. You could tell, they loved each other. They didn't seem exceptionally close, but I think they were.
Right.
Again, I just didn't see that.
What about,
I wasn't in the studio with them where you pick up on things like that.
You spoke highly of Ed Loeffler before. What do you think made him work so well with Van Halen?
Well, taking you back to your last question about the difference between when David Lee was there and Sammy Hagar, one of the big differences was Ed Loeffler. Ed Loeffler was a brilliant manager. Everybody in that band knew that Ed was looking after him 100% of the time in every way, shape, and form. And the band's finances had been mismanaged pretty badly for quite some time. And when Ed Loeffler took over, that all changed. And the band all of a sudden were making money. It was a very professional operation. Ed Loeffler was a very experienced manager who was all business.
And how did you feel Van Halen fit into the bill? It was interesting. It was sort of a heavier bill for Van Halen to play, with the Scorpions, Metallica, Dokken, and Kingdom Come were all much heavier bands than Van Halen with Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, you almost said Van Hagar. I heard, yeah.
Well, we call it, I have to be honest with you, here on the podcast, we call it Van Hagar, and the reason why is we love both eras of the band. We prefer the Roth era. However, we view it as 2 separate bands. They really are very different bands, and we call it Van Hagar because it's just a very different band.
I couldn't agree more. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's just different. To us, even though Van Halen is Alex and Eddie's last name, when you thought Van Halen, you thought David Lee Roth, because he was so integral and identifiable as part of Van Halen, even though that wasn't his last name, even though he named the band Van Halen too. But with Van Halen, with Sammy, we personally felt like they should have changed the name of the band because it was so different. In fact, Warner Brothers wanted them to, but Eddie refused to do so because it was his last name and pride and all that kinds of stuff. I went to the show. I saw the show at Giant Stadium, and it was a great bill, but I also felt like these guys are way heavier than Van Halen is. I mean, like, way heavier. When you have the Scorpions and Metallica and Dokken, these guys are much heavier a bill than Van Halen coming out and singing When It's Love. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Metallica's singing One and Master of Puppets. It's like, it's crazy. So do you feel like the bill was off kilter, and how did the bands get along?
Bands got along. I mean, I can compare it to other tours. I did Lollapalooza in '92 with the Chili Peppers, and it was the Chili Peppers and Ministry and Pearl Jam.
Yeah, I saw that too.
But all of those bands, by the end of the tour, everybody was like really close friends, and everybody was playing with everybody else on stage. And it wasn't like that on Monsters of Rock. It was more of a military operation.
Okay,
And the bands didn't really socialize that much. I socialized more with the Scorpions than any of Van Halen ever did.
Wow.
Because the Van Halen guys never went to the bar after the show. It was me and Ed Loeffler and Chris Pollan.
Okay.
Always ended up at the hotel bar after the show and talk about the show, whatever, have a couple of drinks. And also the Scorpions would always come, and a number of other people. There were about 20 or 30 of us. That was another job that became my job, was to advance the hotel bar to let people know that, hey, don't close the bar early because we're coming.
Okay, that's nice.
So there were a couple of bars we had, that had to stay open late for us.
How did that tour do? There was rumors that it suffered financially because it was so big.
It did. It almost, in fact, it may have actually bankrupted a promoter or two. I think what the industry learned from that tour is that big stages don't sell tickets. It's the lineup. And in your reference, you're talking about the lineup, maybe it's too heavy or whatever. I don't know that the lineup was that great. I think like Dokken maybe should have been somebody else. I think Kingdom Come definitely should have been somebody else.
Right.
So I don't know that the bill was as balanced as it could have been.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they were trying to appeal to too many different audiences.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of press about how big the stage is. We had 3 stages. And the biggest one was, we called Big Bertha, I think.
Oh, okay.
And it would only fit in certain stadiums. And then the production, so there were 3 separate productions that had leapfrog across the country.
Wow.
It would take, I think, the big stage took 5 days to assemble, to put it up, and then 3 days to strike it. So the costs involved having 3 separate sound rigs, 3 separate lighting rigs, 3 separate stages, leapfrogging across the country really didn't make a whole lot of financial sense unless every stadium is a sellout. And not every stadium was.
Did weather affect you guys in terms of rain or heat?
Yeah, heat for sure. I remember the Rubber Bowl in Akron, Ohio. Called the Rubber Bowl. I remember the crew started calling it the Condom Cup. They renamed it the Condom Cup, and it was like 120 degrees at the soundboard.
Oh my God!
At one point in the day, and I had all these press people that I had to deal with, and there wasn't an air conditioner. I mean, we had the dressing rooms were air conditioned, and that was about it. Maybe at the production office, but the press area was this old wooden box, basically, with windows that were hard to open and no air conditioning. It must have been 115 in there.
Wow.
There was that weather. It was really oppressive. The only time weather really impacted us was when we were in Maine. There were just torrential rains. We were supposed to go in by helicopter, and the storm was so bad they couldn't fly the chopper, so we went by limos. We had a couple of limos from the hotel. Gosh, seems like maybe a 35, 40-minute drive. But again, weather definitely impacted. And then we got there, and before Van Halen went on, they had these big transformers, backstage to power all of the lighting. The water level was rising so much that they had to power down the show.
Wow.
Stop everything for a while. And yeah, I mean, if it had risen any more, it would have been over.
Wow.
But the rain stopped and the water level went down and the show resumed.
What was the best show of the tour? Do you remember one that stood out as the best?
Yeah, and I'd have to think about that. They were all pretty damn good. Van Halen was on every night.
Did they record any of the shows? Do you know? Was there any recording?
Not to my knowledge. No? Yeah, I wondered about that myself.
Yeah. Okay.
But they should have.
Yeah.
But I think there were so many problems, the logistics and the difficulty in selling tickets in some markets. That's kind of where the tension was. I don't think Ed Lefter could have handled one more thing.
Did the guys
like a live recording?
Did the guys have any special backstage requests? Is there certain things that they used to like backstage?
Oh, probably, but I wouldn't, I never saw the catering rider. I don't know what was there.
Okay.
We didn't really have that much backstage that I'm thinking about. I mean, in the dressing room, there was really nothing that special on this tour.
Okay.
Backstage.
What about was there a lot of groupies backstage or no?
No.
No, that was gone.
All that ended after Noel Monk.
Oh, really?
They used to have these passes. They were round passes, guest passes for after show, and they called them pleasure discs. And it was the roadie's job was to give those out to hot girls in the audience. And I think they would have put their initials on it or something.
Right.
And then if
they get
David
a bonus.
Lee slept with him, they got a bonus.
Yeah.
It was some,
Oh, yeah.
None of that was going on. None of that was going on by the time we got to the Monsters of Rock.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting because Sammy made it sound like that was happening on the next tour around 1991, 1992, the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but that's all the bluster to appeal to the young fans.
I agree.
Cool. It's like taking a swig of Jack Daniels and that kind of, it's theatrical. It's just theater. And that's press, When I was on the road with Pill, I may digress for a moment. This would have been in 1980.
Yeah.
So that's when the radio special was still pretty fresh. I don't think they had a second album yet, did they?
They had 3 albums out by 80.
Okay, so, but they were big stars at that point.
Yeah,
and
big stars, yeah.
Marshall Burrow was gone, and Noel Monk was managing them. And wherever they stayed, Noel would book like the entire floor of a hotel. This is where a lot of the money was going, for things like that. And all this incredible security. And there was a hotel in Cleveland called Swingos. Look it up. It's legendary. That's where all the bands stayed, was at Swingos.
Okay.
And Noel Monk's girlfriend at the time, Diane Nardizzi, was a travel agent, and she booked the Pill tour. She did all the Warner Brothers bands. So she had Van Halen booked at Swingos, and they had an entire floor of the hotel. Well, because we all knew each other, Noel and Diane and myself, and they said, well, Larry, you guys can stay on our floor, and they had a couple of security guys at the elevator, nobody can get off on that floor unless you're not blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So we're there. Van Halen had a show that night. We had a show the next night. So I'm in my room, and Eddie's Van Halen's room was next to mine. And I came back from the show, and I got a knock on the door one morning or something, and it was Eddie in the hotel terry cloth bathrobe and just coming over to talk, to just hang out. He just wanted to visit, which was cool. And it was great. And we visited. I don't remember anything about what we talked about. We might have talked a little bit about the radio special. I believe we did.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember something about, there's a moment where the band's going to Japan, and I used a gong sound effect.
Yeah,
I remember that. Something like Japan, and I remember he really liked that. He was telling me that. And that was the end of it. And I hadn't seen John. Then the next day, Van Halen is, gone at whatever time, and never saw John Lydon the whole time until it was time for us to go to our show. And I said, where have you been? He was afraid. He didn't want to go out of his room because he's afraid he might run into somebody from Van Halen.
Oh, jeez. That's hysterical.
That's funny.
That was real.
Yeah.
Wow. So did Ed know you were next door? He just knocked on your door just to BS with you?
Yeah. No, he knew I was there. They all knew. We had rooming lists that showed where everybody was, because we were on Van Halen's floor. They never had other people on their floor before.
Were they wildly partying on the floor or no?
Not that I could see.
No?
I mean,
Okay.
I wasn't. None of us, were. And Eddie wasn't partying. He just, like I said, I think he just saw, I don't remember. He said, Larry's next door, and he knocked on my door,
At the end of your special, the band goes into a rendition of Happy Trails. Did they do that on their own, or did you prompt them to do that?
We did that in the dressing room. I'd forgotten about that. That was in St. Louis. Yeah, I don't know if they were just screwing around, and I loved it, so I wanted to make sure I recorded it.
Oh, it was
So
perfect.
They did record it for me,
Yeah, it was perfect. Well, Larry, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was very cool to talk to you about all your different escapades with Van Halen from the late 70s to the late 80s, and we wish you lots of luck in the future. What are you up to now?
I'm actually working on a documentary series with world-famous, legendary photographer Henry Diltz.
Really?
The working title is Route 66 Exposed.
Wow.
And we just finished the sizzle reel on that.
I'm familiar with Henry's work, mostly with the Monkees, because he was pretty much their official photographer, the first.
Are you aware that I managed Davey?
No, really?
Yeah, I was Davey's manager for years. Henry,
I have a whole bunch of questions for you now that are not Van Halen related.
Okay. Well, we'll catch up. Yeah, I got a million Davey stories, lots of funny ones there. But I will tell you, you asked about a funny, if I can keep you going for a minute here.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I'm not trying to outdo David Lee Roth, but I thought of a funny story. When we were in Detroit, we're actually in Pontiac, Michigan at the Silverdome. As I understand it, the Pistons really didn't have much of a chance of getting into the playoffs. So the city of Pontiac, Michigan, who owns the Silverdome, signed a lease with Van Halen's Monsters of Rock for our show on whatever date that was. Well, the Pistons made it to the playoffs. And wouldn't you know it, we had this big stage in Silverdome, and for the basketball, the stage had to be on the other side of the arena. So Ed Leffler says, hey, we got a lease. You're going to have to play your NBA game somewhere else. So he ends up negotiating and gets 14 courtside seats and an interview with Van Halen on their stage by Pat O'Brien from CBS at halftime.
Wow.
That's a pretty big deal. He needs to sell tickets. So this was, kind of an opportunity. The problem was that our dressing rooms were now on the wrong side of the arena. So we had to have golf carts to go back and forth to the stage in the arena because the entire configuration had to be reversed. Oh, and their friend Ted Nugent, they had enough tickets to invite Ted Nugent to the game. So he came, and it was halftime, and I'm getting the band together to go up to the stage, and Ted had to pull out his Derringer to show everybody. So he passed that around. He had that. And then, so we get up on the stage, and we're waiting for the CBS crew and Pat O'Brien, who's the sports guy who's going to interview the band. And I'm up there with the band and Ed Leffler, and about, a few minutes go by, and there's no CBS crew, and Ed Leffler is pissed. And he said, that's it. He goes, come on, guys. And I'm like, yeah, give it a minute. Anyway, so they start walking off, and I find the crew and get them up there, and I go back and run ahead and get Ed and the guys and bring it back to the stage. And then they had a great interview. I don't know if any of that's on YouTube. Really good interview with Pat O'Brien. And Ed was really happy. I mean, if that hadn't happened, Ed would have been impossible to deal with. So anyway, it went really well. Ed loved it. And when it was over, the lights are off, and Pat's talking to the band and to Ed for a minute. And Ed was all about talking to Pat O'Brien. And Pat O'Brien said, I remember when rock and roll was just sunglasses and blowjobs. Ed Leffler thought that's the funniest thing he'd ever heard. He told that story every single venue after that. I must have heard him tell that story a dozen times.
That's so funny.
And now, Runnin with Van Halen.
Well, Van Halen was just like a local rivals, actually. I was in a kind of a junior high school type band, and the Van Halens, Edward and Alex, had their setup going, and Michael was across town with his own setup, just kind of high school kids trying to make rock and roll. And, one guy would want to be a lawyer or a doctor or something and move on, quit the band. And
that's what our parents wanted.
Yeah. And, it kept going on like that, until we found each other. We knew we had to, get together with other people who wanted to really get out and make records, get out and travel, get out and do something with the music, And that's difficult to find, and we were lucky that we found each other. We started playing backyard parties, high school functions, dances,
churches, weddings,
bar mitzvahs.
We played everywhere we possibly could.
And eventually we played in the bars, started getting into the bar scene, 5 45-minute sets a night, and You Really Got Me. That was one of like the 300 songs that we played at the bars by other people. Played the bars, but you can't play original material there really, you know. People want to dance, you know, hey, honey, want to go dance? You know, they don't want to be distracted by something they aren't familiar with. And so we started to rent little halls and throw these shows. You know, we like moved our backyard parties in where we would charge $1 a head into the halls. We rented to the Pasadena Civic, which is of course a hometown first. And we moved all over the Southern California area. We'd do it down in Orange County. We'd do it in the San Fernando Valley. We'd go out near San Bernardino, you know. It wasn't all just like one place. And we'd throw our own shows, put out flyers, posters, you know.
It's the only places we could really play our own music. You know, do a complete Van Halen show without playing other people's material.
So we said, hey, if we're good enough to be as big as we really want to be, you know, travel as far as we want, then we'll get discovered. You know, we'll build our audience and people will talk and go, oh, hey, you got to see this band tomorrow night. You know, I saw them last night. And then a friend of a secretary would tell somebody. And basically that's what happened with Warner Brothers, is the word started to filter down. You know, hey, Van Halen's, you know, cooking around and so forth and so on. And
you get the write-ups in the Times.
Yeah. Previous to that, Mo Austin, the president of Warner Brothers, and Ted Templeman, our producer to be, came and saw us one crummy Monday night. We were playing for free in a Hollywood bar. And
there was about 10 people out there.
Yeah, you know, and they saw us play, and they came backstage right away after the set and said, hey, let's sign. Our first album took us about 3.5 weeks, I'd say, and that's on the outside, closer to 3.
The actual recording of the music and the singing took about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. Records were new to us.
We didn't know. You know, we figured, hey, all we can do is maybe try and reproduce Van Halen as it really is, which is our concept. You know, very few overdubs, almost no studio wizardry done to it, you know, and that we could go out and do it live and impress people live, which we had been doing for several years. But the record, we didn't know. We went on our first United States tour with a couple of bands, Journey and Montrose. We were third bill in smaller halls, which were like 3,000 to 5,000 seats. And we've been continuing touring since that time. We've been around the world. We went through Europe, and we did England, 22 cities. We went to Japan for several weeks.
Japan.
Time to rock and roll.
Hey, listen, watch out for the jam. Let's really bounce out for the jam.
Yeah.
I can fully relate to this, man. In fact, this is the high point of my day and night, you know? Which usually runs in together these days and nights, you know?
With the high point of last night.
The high point of last night is the low point of tonight. See?
I gotta take a piss.
Yeah. Do you?
You're the one about,
There's two guys walking down the street, see? An old Chinese proverb say, man who walked down the street, not crazy, just feel nuts. That's not true. Here we
go! And it's been that way all around the world. Been to like Belgium and France, Holland, where a great many of the people don't understand what we're saying in between the songs on stage. They don't speak English, but they know what Van Halen is playing for. Yeah. And then they'll pick up the record, you know, or they've got a taste of the excitement from the record and came to see the live show. We played some incredibly out-of-the-way places. We played a little town called Popering in Belgium, which is like way out even from Brussels. We had to drive for hours through these little towns. And they came. There was, you know, several thousand people showed up in a little barn-type place. And everybody got crazy, and they all said, yeah, in the right places, and, you know. And it's been that way all around the world. In England, it's a different, it's different than the United States over there. It's a different sort of society. They treat their rock and roll a little more seriously over in England. And they sure treated Van Halen seriously.
Get fans over there, they're hardcore fans for life.
And I ain't talking about no goddamn beer. I told Edward I want the one with the blonde hair and blue eyes and the big personality. And I said, baby, come in. I tried to whisper some sweet nothings in her ear. I tried to whisper some sweet nothings. I tried to whisper some sweet somethings. I tried to whisper just about any mother. Now dig it, here's the good part. Only woman say, only woman say, only woman says. Every time she say that, she won't know what I'm talking about. Well, people, I got to tell her, I ain't talking about love, baby.
As soon as we walk into the dressing room, Al starts banging on the tables, and he starts to tune up, and somebody puts some rock on the tape player, and have a little drink, and
start dancing and singing.
Say hello to people, and then you brush your hair, and say hello to somebody else, and then drink, put your clothes on, and tune a little more, complain,
drink a beer,
and you're getting ready, and as the time goes on, it's like you can feel it. There's no clocks. I don't wear a watch. It's like all of a sudden you feel the time approaching, Now, the other night, we got held up. Everybody was ready for the 8 o'clock show. 8 o'clock came, and our road manager comes in and goes, 10 more minutes. And then all of a sudden, that's when you start to come unglued and go, you got all this excess energy. So that's when the buffet went.
And the table went.
And then we were ready. 10 minutes later, we were ready. We were ready, baby. We were ready to go. We're ready to hit that stage. We're ready right now.
Really, something's got to break, and it ain't going to be us.
and the road manager comes in and says,
all right, gentlemen, it is time to rock and roll.
Wait a second.
There's no oil on my side of the stage.
Wait a minute.
Tonight, is there?
Final hair check.
Northern or Marcus. Last night I broke my leg. There's oil in front of my amps. I'm running around slipping. What's wrong with crack, man? I got time. Someone asked me where that that new step, man.
Yeah. Thank you. 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 I'm practicing the encore. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, let's do it. David?
You guys are so sexy.
All right, come on.
Let's play off each other tonight. If anything goes wrong, extra all right.
Lots of smiles.
All right. Work together. Don't blow it out in the first song. Blow it out in the third one.
Nah, really. That yellow floor right there, slippery.
Watch the yellow stuff.
Going up on the stage right side.
No, I can't see a thing, man.
Yeah! There we go! All right.
Super cosmic, supernatural program play here, so if the crowd be willing, and if the band be ready,
We come back, we did a second American tour playing all of the big stadium shows this summer.
Outdoor summer shows.
Played the Dallas Jam with Aerosmith and Nugent. We played the Oakland Day on the Green.
We played with the Stones, the Superdome.
Biggest indoor crowd they ever had.
That was incredible. That was standing up in front of 83,000 people and asking them a yes question and hearing 83,000 go, yes!
Almost blew us over. It's a definite charge.
It sounds like a jet plane taking off.
all right, brothers. Now look, don't overplay it. Got to get him. Hey, what's happening? Good crowd. You're looking good, man. Yeah, it's real hot up there. Are you going to use our fans? Yeah, go ahead, man. It's a sweater up there.
Oh, man.
It's warm out there. Hey,
play all money. Don't lose your play all money.
Another one down. All right, Jesus, here you St. Louis, down in flames, baby. Oh, yeah. Bone crush.
Yeah. Actually, we've all just been swimming. Al, you don't smell right. Have you taken a bath? What, is there one missing? I was, what's that, one of your father's jokes? What are you? What are your mother's?
Who's going to have a shot of Southern Comfort with us? Let's have a shot for St. Louis. Yeah. Detroit, Cleveland.
Guys. With a Jack Daniels back. Yeah, what a show. What a girl.
Where are we going tomorrow? Where are we headed tomorrow?
Kansas City.
Yeah. Hey, I go to run up to Noel just before we hit the back of the stage. I go, what state are we in? I know it's St. Louis, but I want to yell a state. Mark gives me a look like, what do you ask me for, man?
And meanwhile, he's going, oh my God, what state are we in?
And the crowd's going crazy, and Mark's going, hey, man, don't bother me with that stuff.
I guess what state of Mark guys.
So I ran up, so I'm running on stage, and he stops, asks some Joe by the side, says, hey, what state are we in? Kansas. The guy goes, the state of confusion. Everybody's screaming.
State of high. Tell me the truth, Peter. How do you run the lights with that bottle in your hand?
I try to have a nipple in each nostril. It's an important thing for the show. Not a lot of people aren't into it, but I really either in each nostril. If they're really not large enough, maybe an ear. You know.
No, wait a second. Here. Do something serious here. Bombarded.
Check us out on Facebook at Dave and Dave Unchained, a Van Halen podcast, on Twitter at DD Unchained, on Instagram at DD Unchained Podcast, and you can email us at ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello.
Hey, how are ya?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, what's going on?
Not much, just trying to keep cool.
Oh my God, it's hot as fuck.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to cool down tomorrow, though.
Is it?
I think so, at least around here.
Oh my God, it's fucking brutal.
I know.
I'm headed to Canada tomorrow.
Are you really?
Can you believe it?
What's in Canada?
My family's making me go on vacation.
They're making you go on vacation.
Yeah, because I never go on vacation. They'll very often go without me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm always working and, it's hard for me to get off. Like, they have blocks of time off, and I don't. You know what I mean?
It's called the summer.
Yeah, it's called the summer. Yeah. So very often, I don't go. They've been on, you know how many vacations they've been on without me? It's, ridiculous. They went to Italy without me.
And whose choice was that?
Well, I had no choice. I had to take care of the dog. My dog was ill. That was that whole fucking ordeal.
Oh, that's right.
Right, remember that? So it was a whole ordeal. But anyway, they're all excited because it's the first vacation. They made me book it. I had to do all this work to get all the work ahead of time prepped and everything, blah, blah, blah. 6,000 things had to be put into place so I could take off for 5 days.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah,
well, I'm very happy for you.
Yeah,
That's
it should be
awesome.
good. We'll see what happens. It's going to be 7 hours in the car. I'm going to kill
Oh,
myself.
you're driving?
Yeah, it's fucking brutal. And I'm like, 7 hours in the car with the 5 of us. I'm like, if we survive that, we'll see what happens.
Well, it was nice knowing you.
That's the end of me. As long as they behave, and they don't pick on the old man, it should be all right.
Well, you know what it's going to be then?
Yeah.
It's going to be the And Dave podcast.
Somehow or another, I'll make it back to make sure we get the August out and get September going, so...
I'm not worried.
All right.
Well,
We'll see what happens. We'll give you an update as soon as it happens.
All right.
Are you having fun?
Thank you.